Good morning and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 1 Center Street, and is also being held via Zoom. And we are having technical difficulties with our live stream on our YouTube channel. So if any members of the public wish to watch the proceedings or participate, they should join the Zoom meeting. And the information on how to do that can be found on our website. And we'll begin by calling the roll, and Mark Silverman will do that right now.
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Chu. Commissioner Ginsburg.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum. Here. Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Here.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Again, welcome to our public hearing and public meeting today. We're going to begin our public hearing with a public meeting item, which is for an application that has already had a public hearing and is back today with revisions in response to our comments. And then we'll move to our public hearing agenda, and I'll turn it over to Corey Harrell, our Director of Preservation, to take us through our agendas.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And good morning, everyone. Start today's Preservation Department agenda with public meeting item number 1, LPC 23-07040, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1398, lot 5. 101 East 63rd Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a modern style residence and garage designed by Paul Rudolph and built in 1966. The application is to modify the entrance. This was last presented at the public hearing of February 28, 2023, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present their revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
All right, well, let's do that now so they can begin. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to open the proceedings? And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you may begin.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, you just need to use your arrow keys on the keyboard. And there will be a little bit of a delay.
It's not moving forward.
There you go.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Steve Blatz. I'm the architect on this project, and I'm here this morning with Emma O'Neill from Studio Sofield and Valerie Campbell from Kramer 11. As noted, we are here as a return to follow up from our public hearing on February 28th with some revisions to share with you. The project that we're working on is 101 East 63rd Street. It's located on the north side of 63rd Street between Park and Lexington Avenue. The photo that you see on the left is an archival photo from Ezra Stoller. This building was built by Paul Rudolph, 1966 to 68, and it's an important building in contributing building in the Upper East Side Historic District. It's a very important modernist landmark. One thing that you'll notice in the photo from Ezra Stoller is that one of the most significant elements of this facade is the very deep inset entry alcove. These are photos that are more contemporary. Over the past few years, the current owner has done an extensive interior and exterior renovation and restoration. However, we have found some challenges from the aforementioned deep set alcove. The door itself, let me just point out here. The door itself is 4 feet wide and it opens out towards the street rather than inwards, as would be more common in a townhouse. The door is set back 4 feet from the plane of the garage, which itself is more than 3.5 feet from the property line. So it is quite inset. And it also has a protective awning or soffit rather over the entrance. And as a result of this, we've found some both logistical and security challenges. Because of the deep inset, it's been a place where people have gathered for smoking, public urination, and even frequently sleeping. Because the door opens to the outside rather than to the inside, there have been many times where the owner was essentially trapped in his home and was unable to leave because there were loiterers sheltering in the space. This is a elevation showing the 4-foot entrance door. You can see here the 4-foot setback from the garage, as well as the further setback of from the street line. This section shows, perhaps it's easier for me to use this. This section shows the soffit line that protects this. So really from the street line to the entrance door, it's all protected, and it has been a little bit too welcoming. This was a proposal that we prepared in February 28th. And you can see the difference between these two is that we were proposing to bring the entire entry door and side light forward by 19 inches to make the space less, to reduce the depth of the space. And there was not any support for that at the time. We were told, we were requested to come back with some new design solutions, including possibly studying a gate. We did extensive designs, studies for a gate, and ultimately decided that a gate would be too intrusive upon the facade and would not be complementary to to Rudolph's initial design intentions. Here you can see our new solution that we're presenting today. And we're proposing to keep everything in the same plane that it is. The door remains in the same plane. However, what we would like to do is to split the door to create a 3-foot door opening that would open in. And this matches Rudolph's design solution for the interior vestibule. He had a split door. He has a split door there, which remains today. And so we would be duplicating that. And the reason that we need to split the door is because the vestibule itself is rather tight. It's only 5'7" deep, and a 4-foot door opening into that space is just too congested. And it's also essential that the door open in so that if there is anyone sheltering in the exterior vestibule, that the owner is able to open the door. Here you can see, up here you can see what a 4-foot door, how much space the 4-foot door would be taking up if we were to just change the swing. And in the lower plan, we're showing the split door, which matches the door in the interior of the vestibule. Now, in addition to the modification to the entrance door, I should also mention that, we would be planning to reuse the existing door handle and address letters, which are original to the home, and we would replace them on this door. The door would be of the same material as the existing. It's a metal clad wood door that's painted to match the rest of the steel facade. So in addition to the changes to the door, we're also requesting to add an access door on the west side of that entrance vestibule, which would be right here. And we would like to put a hose bib inside the garage, and this would create an access panel for the hose bib so that we can address the aforementioned issues that we have up front. really, it needs to be cleaned daily, and we need a ready source for the water. The panel here would be glass, bronze glass, to match the existing. It would be devoid of any visible hardware. We would just have very thin metal seams that match the existing detailing on the facade. Here we have the existing conditions. This is what we had proposed in February 28th. And this is our presentation for today. So you can see that this is in the same plane as this. Because of the deep recess, we feel that the change that we're proposing is very minimal and appropriate. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions, commissioners? All right, I don't see any questions. I'll just note for the record that we did receive a letter from the Historic Districts Council on this revised proposal, which was shared with the commissioners in advance of today's public meeting. So we'll begin our discussion now. As the applicant stated, they previously proposed to pull the door forward to address some issues that were happening in the recessed sort of vestibule space. And at that time, I think all of the commissioners felt that having that void in the at the base of the building was integral to the architecture and the design intent, and asked that they explore other alternatives, possibly a gate. I think the applicant said that they looked at a gate but felt that it was adding a new element that wasn't part of the design and was more intrusive. And so they're proposing to keep the door in the same plane and keep that void that we felt was so significant. But in order to do that, they're asking to change the swing of the door, which results in changing the size of the door as well. But would do that in matching materials and also to conceal the hose bib behind a new opening in the side of the vestibule. So I think the end result is that you still have the void, and that the door, which is very simple in design, is in shadow. And I think that the change in the leaf size isn't going to be that noticeable. And I think it's a good solution. Commissioner Lutfi, I don't know if you had a chance to see this at all.
I did.
Okay.
I actually think it's a very smart solution to the problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think it's a very smart solution to the problem. It's a, difficult situation. I actually agree with your not wanting to put up the gate in the front, and I can approve this.
Okay. Vice Chair Bland.
I agree. I think there's very small, and this is a very small change to this important house by an important architect. I will admit I wanted to study architecture because of Paul Rudolph long ago. And actually had the experience of working with him on an early scheme to make some changes to the ULA building. He was not easy to work with, but interesting. And he was flexible about some significant changes to the A&E building at UL, probably his most famous or infamous building. In terms of changing the glass, some of these are pretty significant changes, and I have those sketches today. So I think all that's to say that I think he would find this to be a very small and appropriate change to an important building of his work in New York City. I think the exploration of the gate, I'm glad you looked at it, and I'm very happy you rejected such a thing. I think this is a very good solution, and I think Paul Rudolph also would have done such a thing if he were willing to do it.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, not only is a good solution, but necessary solution because the means of egress is a safety issue involved, and I think it's very well done. And you articulated the presentation very well.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with my colleagues, appropriate. And
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
I too agree that it's appropriate. I'm kind of sad, like, I think oversized stores are cool and they kind of make you notice and they're interesting, but that's, I think that in this case, from a preservation perspective, it's appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Jefferson.
Carefully thought through and appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Master.
I agree with the comments. I think it's appropriate and the changes are very minimal.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think we have a consensus. Mark, will you call the vote? Oh, sorry. Ready to go here. Commissioner Lockley, would you read your motion?
Seems a little
Wrong.
Speeding through today's.
Anyway, it is, I also want to say it's really a lovely, special building. Well, I'm so glad it's, within our landscape here. So, in the matter of docket 23-07040-101 East 63rd Street, Upper East Side Historic District, a modern style residence and garage designed by Paul Rudolph and built in 1966. The application is to modify the entrance. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Upper East Side Historic District. I recommend approval finding that the replacement of the metal entrance door in the deep recessed vestibule with unequal paired metal doors with a reverse swing, which will differ in appearance only with a minimal seam between the doors and the relocation of the hardware, will not call attention to itself or detract from the design of the building. That the introduction of an operable bronze glass panel for a hose bib at the vestibule return will not be discernible from the exterior when in the closed position and will otherwise match the historic condition, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Upper East Side Historic District.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you now call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Aye. Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll now move to our
That's
public
8 in
hearing
favor.
agenda.
Thank you very much.
Right, we'll now move to our public hearing agenda, starting with public hearing item number 1. LPC 23-01667. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Brooklyn, block 443, lot 59, 287 Carroll Street in the Carroll Gardens Historic District. This is a row house designed by William J. Bedell and built in 1874. The application is to modify window openings, to install integral sunshade awnings, and to construct a rear yard addition.
Thank you for your time today in reviewing our proposed changes to 287 Carroll Street. My name is Ruth Mandel, and I am representing Co-Adaptive as the architect and the owners here today to present the restoration and renovation to this property. The original building was built by William J. Bedell and dates back to 1874. We are proposing to renovate the property into a passive house that uses zero energy and then with a new rear yard addition to allow additional space for the owners and their growing family. For some context, here are the current and historic facades of the building. By the time it was designated as a historic district in 1973, many of the historic details from 1874 have been lost from the front facade. And we plan to restore all of them to bring the building back to its former glory. The property is located between Hoyt Street and Smith Street on the north side of Carroll Street in Carroll Gardens Historic District. This is the block diagram of this particular block showing 2 points of visibility from Hoyt Street. You will notice that there are 3 buildings, 297, 299, and 301 Carroll Street, marked in green, that are a little deeper than the historic neighbors and are 4 stories to the east of our property. There are 2 others flanking it on the west, 265 and 263, that also have 4-story additions, extending back further into the rear yards, although these are not full width. We are proposing a tiered 3-story addition to 287 Carroll Street, highlighted on this block plan in red. The lower portion of the addition is 2 stories to blend in with the adjacent neighbor's 2-story addition. This Google satellite image gives additional context and shows the relationship of 287 to the deeper buildings on the east and west on the same block. It's worth noting here that the front facade has a deep 30-foot setback from the public street. This is the proposed building section. There will be new solar panels, skylights, and condensed units with guardrails on the roof, which have all been confirmed non-visible from Hoyt Street and will be reviewed at staff level. We've mocked up the extension shown here. You'll see that the 2 lower floors will extend as deep as the neighbor at 289 Carroll Street. We've also mocked up the roof additions and determined with the staff that they are not visible from the public vantage points. This is further underlined by these photos taken from Hoyt Street. You can see 297 Carroll blocking most of the view of the proposed extension at 287 Carroll. The guardrails on the roof are partially visible as shown in orange, very slightly, but we will be using a very thin railing to blend those in. This is just zoomed in further for clarity. You can see with the trees how little visibility there is. So on the left here is a photo showing the existing rear facade, and on the right is our proposed addition. The addition is 3 stories tall and set back at the uppermost floor. We are looking at shoring up the existing 4th floor of the building facade so that it can remain entirely in place. The top floor windows of the original building will be replaced in kind with new windows that mimic the historic windows. The setback 3rd floor follows the same original opening dimensions and it is only at the 2 lower floors where we break that rhythm with larger openings which connect the rear deck to the rear yard. Our proposed material palette is a light brick in a stack bond with slightly off-white tone window frames for a very subtle overall palette. The 4th floor will remain red brick. This axonometric view shows the tiered nature of the proposed addition with the rounding railings and deck alongside some greening at each setback. The material reference in the bottom right corner is a color swatch only, as we're proposing a stack bond as shown above. Here are the existing and proposed rear facade elevation drawings. showing our intent to keep the fourth floor intact, though we are replacing the windows. The third floor will follow the rhythm of those openings, and the two lower levels open these wider for connection to the outdoors. Our design for the rear addition takes inspiration and precedent from the neighboring buildings, a lot of which have white or light rear facades, as you can see in these photos. Just very briefly, here are the existing and proposed roof plan, which we have optimized for no visibility from the public thoroughfare. Moving on to the front facade. Our proposed design brings back the stone detailing around the windows and the front facade wood door. We particularly want to restore the eyebrow lintels, which are special to this particular era and were previously removed. All the windows will be replaced with new high-performance passive house wood windows that are in keeping with the original facade. The reason we are presenting the work on this facade to you today is because we would like to propose recessed awnings to be embedded behind the brownstone, which would set these windows back by 3 inches on the upper floors. We feel that overall, this window setback has minimal effect on the appearance of the facade, especially considering the 30-foot setback from the public street. Here are elevation drawings showing the existing and proposed facade details that will be restored. Because the street facade is a southern facade, our intent with these is to keep the sun from penetrating and heating up the interiors, which will make this house significantly less reliant on active cooling in the ever hot summers of New York City. So at the basement level, we will replace the windows, restoring the shallow arch top. There are no recessed awnings proposed at this level, though we will be repairing the existing metal grills and restoring them in their original locations. The first floor has been filled at the bottom at some point in the building's lifetime, and we will be restoring it to its original depth, alongside the detailing around the window, the lintel, and the sill. The second and third floor front facade windows will also be replaced and set back the same distance. The stone detailing eyebrows at the lintel and sill will also be restored. We are proposing recessed awnings instead of surface mounted awnings to reduce their visibility when they are not in use. Traditional awnings are highly visible when they are not extended and require a significant amount of labor to retract and extend. Our proposed recessed awnings would be able to be easily switched between extension and retraction, allowing for significantly easier maintenance for the building owners and easy operability between the two, allowing them to seamlessly switch between being able to keep the hot sun out in the summer and allowing the sun's energy to offset heating in the wintertime, without the need to dangerously hang out the window or use scaffolding to move them. Here are close-up renders of our windows showing the proposed glass pane setback, the extended awnings alongside window and shade colors. The shade hardware will be powder coated to match the window frames to minimize their visibility. So this shows them retracted. They become entirely invisible and slot behind the brownstone layer. Our proposed details on page right here show the proposed awning and the setback of the window. The fabric awning can be completely recessed and invisible when they are rolled up and tucked behind the historic brick mold. The horizontal bars of the awning will be hidden behind the brick mold. When they are extended, the horizontal bars drop down to allow the awning arms to swing out, unrolling the fabric. The window opening on the parlor floor will be restored to its original opening size, as you can see here as well. These show the details of the second and third floors where the opening will remain the same. The detail otherwise is very similar. Here are the existing and proposed window details in plan. As you can see, the face of the brick mold will remain in the existing position in relation to the facade, and the glass is set back a little bit further. And we've tucked the operable part of the awning behind the brick mold, so that is very invisible. The proposed shades are similar to previous projects we have constructed on non-landmarked buildings, shown here for reference only. The picture on the right shows that there is a pocket behind the brownstone that is very common in townhouses throughout the city. The shade is proposed to be installed in this pocket within the brick structure, so that it does not compromise the look of the brownstone facade when it is tucked away. The shades we are proposing have a similar extension to traditional awnings, but are invisible when retracted. So the right view here shows the awnings when they are extended. We believe that the recent awning is change to the facade and would have a very large impact on increasing the building's energy efficiency and reducing its carbon footprint as part of the project's passive house design strategy. We will be recreating the historic stone details around the window so that the building facade will be restored to its historic state, with a contemporary addition that allows the building to be more resilient in the ever hotter New York City summers. Exterior shading will mean that it can maintain its cool with minimal use of active air conditioning, which unburdens the NYC energy grid and works towards a less carbon intensive future. And with that, I open it up to questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Two questions. So you said zero energy. Are you producing all of the energy on site and can be disconnected from the grid?
We will not be disconnected from the grid, and we will be, with the solar on the roof, be able to produce a majority of what the building uses, because the envelope is so tight and the active systems are so small.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is, there are rear yard additions, you said, that are 4 stories in the donut?
I can go back to that plan. So you can see it a little bit here in the Google Street View. And then in this block plan, the green shows the additions that are 4 stories. And so there's some to the east of the building that are higher than what we are proposing.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, and you could second this, but the buildings to the right are new buildings that I believe are full height and extend further, not rear additions. So there's really just the 2 to the left that are additions of that story.
They go deeper. Yeah.
Right, Commissioner Goldblum.
On your rear yard axle and views, you have like kind of a white stripe coping or something. What is that? What is that made out of? On top of the brick at the various setbacks. Like a sill or something. See what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a break in the brick. It would probably be masonry as well.
Should it be made out of brick also, or made out of stone?
Stone, exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Jefferson, and then Commissioner Lutfi. Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
The alignment of the existing backyard, your new addition, does it align or is it larger?
It aligns with its neighbor.
Is that align? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
The two bottom floors, that is, the top floor then juts out of the beyond.
And how deep is the top floor?
I'm not sure that I have that dimension in here. I can probably answer that by
Okay.
looking it up. for you.
Sure. Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, this is sort of an information question. The shades, I'm just wondering if like how much more energy you save with the shades versus having solar shades on the inside.
We found in sort of mapping this out on other projects that we do, that exterior shadings is in some way the biggest bang for your buck. If you were to do one thing on a building, that makes a humongous difference on the amount of energy that it reduces for cooling. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions at the time, so we'll move to public testimony. And first, I'll just confirm is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? All right, not seeing anyone in the room, I will turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We received one sign up in advance for this item, and I see two hands raised. So we'll first be hearing from Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. So Christina Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please state your name for the record and unmute your line, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, this rear yard addition, perhaps too tall and bulky, is made more intrusive by the proposed color of the bricks. Now, cladding the addition in bricks that approximately match the color of the existing rear facade would help. The other components of this application is the modification of the window openings to install integral sunshades, but we were unable to discern in the presentation materials what these modifications consist of, and this should be clarified. The proposed windows themselves, however, are nothing like any historic row house window. They don't match in operation, material, dimension, or details, and they are set considerably further back in the masonry openings. Now, they may meet the Commission's very liberal window rules, but we don't think that they're appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we'll be hearing from the Historic Districts Council. So Historic Districts Council, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the front facade largely appropriate, including the curved lintels and sunshades, but finds the proposed rear yard addition inappropriate. The rear yard addition should be 2 stories high and preserve the top 2 floors of brick rear of the brick rear wall. Excuse me. Additionally, the use of white brick is too stark a contrast for this particular donut, where so much of the original brick material around it remains intact. Finally, we find that the overall facade composition lacks a coherent compositional approach. We would ask the Commission to work with the applicant to reduce the inappropriate bulk and refine the material and compositional details of this otherwise handsome proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm looking through the attendees list now. I do not see any further hands raised. So I will just note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommends approval, and I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you very much. And just to clarify for the Victorian Society, the aspects of the windows that we're reviewing. The rules do allow the staff to approve high performance windows that have a change in operation as long as the plane, top sash of the plane and the bottom sash of the plane and their relationship to each other remains and matches the historic condition, as well as the profiles and details of the window, including the brick mold and the arch. The windows are before us today because they are being set back within the opening to accommodate the integral awning, which we're reviewing. And now I'd like to turn to the applicant and ask if you'd like to respond to the other comments in the testimony.
I just wanted to add, and maybe I'll go back to the images of the rear facades, that the reason why we propose the light brick is because a significant amount of the buildings on this block have been stuccoed or painted and are light at the rear facade.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Leffy.
Are those buildings across or are they next to the?
This particular view is across. And then along here, you can see there's some that are in line with us that are also white or light gray.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other final questions? All right, so I think we should move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so as I said, on the front facade, we are only looking at the windows because of their setback location. And then we're looking at the integral awnings. And as we know, historically, row houses, as well as almost every other building type, did use awnings as a means of shade. So they are emulating the historic slope and shape of historic awnings. And then at the rear facade, we're looking at the tiered 3-story rear yard addition. And so we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start this one?
Thank you. First of all, I want to compliment you on doing passive house and although you didn't show it hadn't done passive house, those details looked good. I think the recess of those windows in the front of this is an elegant detail to deal with the need to shade it, and also putting the windows back just inherently will shade the right by the building. So I have no issues with that or anything on the front facade. On the rear facade, I have a feeling we're going to have discussion, but I don't mind the third floor addition. It is set back. The windows do line up with the existing windows. I question a little bit the bright white color, and maybe a light gray would be better. And I also question the banding at each floor with the stone, which looks to me to be a very modern detail and not necessary, and it could be simplified. But in general, I think this is approvable. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldblum.
Okay, thanks. I not only do I think that the awnings are appropriate, I think that there should be tax incentives, especially in historic districts, for awnings to be not required, but strongly encouraged in historic buildings. I think that they are apart from the obvious extraordinary energy gains that they provide. They are a part of New York City history that is completely lost. And I think that they should be on high-rise buildings. I think they're great. I think the only thing I would suggest is that the color you've chosen is awfully, I don't know, self-effacing. I think that they're trying to look like stone. And I think that's a mistake on two grounds. First of all, they're not stone. And they shouldn't be stone. It would be bizarre to have brownstone infilling the windows. But I think also historically, they were a moment of expression of color and individuality in a typology that was characterized by uniformity. So I think that you could work with staff on that. That's just a minor little thing, but more power to you, and everybody should do it. I'm going to steal that detail and use it if I get a townhouse. I think that you should look with the staff at the profile of those window heads. They don't look right to me from the renderings and the drawings, but if they are, then that's great. I think that in the rear yard, I am unconvinced that the third floor setback addition is appropriate. Looking at the block plan and at the photos, those photos that you provided that you just breezed by, even though you do have a few four-story structures in this rear yard is predominantly one story at the basement as a space. And I think that the fact that you have a neighbor with a tail kind of gives you a little bit of an in to do what you've done on the lower two levels. But I think that the third level is inappropriate. I think that the choice of the white brick, while at first I thought it was like, ooh, that's a little unusual. But, I think in the light of what we permit in rear yard additions, I think it's rather restrained and totally appropriate. I especially in the context that you've cited it. I too kind of had a weird feeling about that kind of coping cap, masonry stuff. But again, I think that we've seen such, we kind of focus on little details when that's what's there to focus on. And I think that had the project been much bolder and more assertive, we would have let stuff like that breeze by. So I don't think it's gonna render it inappropriate. I think it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Yes, thank you. I agree with my colleagues on their comments. I think the addition of the awnings is a great detail. I agree with Commissioner Goldblum that something that's not just trying to match the stone would be maybe not more appropriate, but maybe more interesting. And I also agree about the rear yard addition, that the third floor is in this context it's too tall, and the addition should be limited to the two stories. I also think that a stark white brick is a bit of a contrast, even next to the painted brick and the stucco. So maybe like a light gray, like Commissioner Ginsburg suggested, or something a little bit softer than bright white. I think that the stone detail is fine, especially if we eliminate the top floor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
In terms of the window openings, replication of the eyebrow head is fine. I think that's great. Integral sunshade is appropriate, but I have issues with it in that a historical block, these fabrics have an image, have a form, and they have a certain quietness to it. When I look at images of 1910, 1920 New York with these awnings, they're all over the place, different colors, different fabric. It becomes a very activated streetscape. Is that what we want? Is that what we're looking for? Or we're looking for a quietness that these brownstones bring? So it's a matter of atmosphere. And the diagram that was shown, everything with a monochromatic color, which is unfair. It's not going to look like that. So that's my concern. And I think it should be 2 stories instead of 3.
All right, Commissioner Master.
I agree with the other commissioners. Love the awning. I love the look. I think the front facade, even with the window setback, is perfectly fine. The real question I think here is the rear facade. I think the white, I don't really have a problem with the white color. The question, of course, is the third floor. This is a tough one. There seem to be other, 4-story additions, not in the vicinity, but there, and then some 2-story additions. The thing that makes me more comfortable with the third floor rear addition is because the massing, it is set back a little bit, and the rear yard is so deep that I think it would accommodate this rear yard addition. So I think I can find this appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
Could you please turn to slide 9? Oh, that was it. That's it. Thank you. I'm going now that I've asked for that, I'm going to talk about the front first. So I also want to commend the applicant on efforts to make this a passive house, especially in a brownstone, putting solar panels on the roof where there's not a lot of square footage. It's a great thing. I also think it's just the concept of a southern exposure is just so tough on from a heat perspective and also from a light perspective, having lived in many, and actually I've loved them. So the shade idea is a great idea, not only from the heat standpoint and the light standpoint, but it is a lovely throwback to something that existed before. And it's so funny that sometimes the original way of doing things is the best way. But I happen to agree with Everardo that right now in New York City, these brownstone neighborhoods are, fairly uniform and look kind of handsome that way. And so my recommendation is that the shade actually be more understated in color, because it's not like tomorrow everybody's going to start doing this. And I think that, and in fact, who knows how many people will actually pick it up. But I think that it would be nice if you don't really disrupt visually what's going on the street.
So does that mean you're comfortable with the brown color?
I am.
Okay.
I actually am very comfortable with it. On the back, I happen to agree with my colleagues who feel that, overall the donut here is not, it's not really built out. And when I look at that, I think that extra floor doesn't really make sense. I also, so I think it would be better to get rid of that. I want to say that I agree about that banding that Mark mentioned. I think that should come off. The side should be more simple. And when I appreciate the applicant's thoughts about the color, but when I look at this within the context of the buildings around it, I think the red brick makes more sense, because it actually, you're moving the mass out and you still want the building in the rear to blend with what's going on beside it. And I think the lighter brick is just going to make it stick out. So I would advocate for, red brick. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Brand.
The advantage of going really last is you get to listen to everybody's brilliance before you speak. And I agree with so much of what I've heard. I think Commissioner Master sort of captured it all for me. So I won't repeat it. I thought her commentary was kind of right on. I can be persuaded either way on the color, but I found your comment not a bright color for even historically we saw fairly bright colors used, blues and greens particularly. But it would be disruptive, because I don't think this is going to be catch up. It will be catch on by all the neighbors. In any event, I think it's an honor. It's I'm really interested to see how we see these in the future. So generally, I'm supportive. The question of the third floor in the rear, I'm a little up in the air on it. As was Commissioner Master. I think I think because of the size of the block, notwithstanding the fact that the neighbors don't have it yet, it could become a model for how to do it. It is set back. That's helpful. I wonder if that should, if it does, I'm not sure it's going to make it, but if it were not white brick, but a red brick, I wonder if that would help it. I have no problem with the white brick. It's too white, but so the lighter brick for the bottom two floors. Maybe that's enough.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, very interesting comments by the colleagues. I think we're in agreement at the front. The awning is very nicely done, and I tend to agree with Jim about that the color should be not popping out. I think it should be more contextual. I agree about the two-story on the base, that on this side there seemed to be the more of the brick tone versus on the opposite side the white color. And if the majority think that the base should be of a lighter color, then I go with the earlier comments about that they should be off-white, not so bright. I'm sort of ambivalent about the third floor. I see the struggle here, and so I would defer to the majority.
Okay. So I think we actually have a lot of different comments, and we've come down with enough support for the awnings as proposed in the color as proposed, and enough support for the white brick and banding at the rear yard addition are split, however, on the height of the addition. We have we're sort of split 50-50 on that. And so I think that we can I think probably we probably wouldn't get to 6 for the 3 stories in the end anyway. So I think we'll take up an action today to do a 2-story rear yard addition. And I know Commissioner Ginsburg, you were comfortable with the 3 stories. Are you comfortable bringing a motion with 1 story? Okay. So it'll be to approve it as is with a 2-story rear yard addition.
Should I?
Yeah.
The matter of LPC 23-01667, 287 Carroll Street, Carroll Gardens Historic District, a row house designed by William J. Bedell and built in 1874. Application is to modify window openings, to install integral sunshades, and construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Carroll Gardens Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the construction of a rear yard addition will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features of the rear facade, that the rear yard addition will only be minimally visible through a gap in the street wall on Hoyt Street and will be seen within the context of neighboring additions, that there are other additions that extend into the center of the block as deeply as the proposed addition, and the work will not diminish the block's central green space, that the design and materiality of the rear yard addition featuring white brick cladding and metal railing will blend with the other brick and stucco rear walls and will be in keeping with the residential scale and character of the other buildings in the block, that the built awnings at the windows in the front of the facade will fit neatly behind the brick mold, and in the stored position, the rolled fabric will be hidden above the top rail of the curved sash without obstructing the curve of the window frame, and that the building is set back approximately 30 feet from the sidewalk, so the changes in the depth of the window within the facade will be difficult to discern from the public thoroughfare. However, I find that the proposed 3-story rear yard addition is taller than the majority of the other rear yard additions within the block, where there are few additions taller than 1 story. Therefore, I recommend that the rear yard addition be lowered by 1 floor to better relate to the other rear yard additions within the block.
Right, and I also want to just note that the commissioners who supported the light brick did ask for it to be light gray instead of a bright white. So please work with the staff on final sample color choices. Okay. All right, Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Aye. Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And please continue to work with the staff. All right, we move to the next hearing item.
Next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 22-11107. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, block 1277, lot 58, 2577th Street in the Jackson Heights Historic District. A neo-Georgian style apartment building designed by Joshua Tabachnik and built in 1936. And the application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
Good morning. I'm Doug Lister. I'm the architect for this project. I'm presenting two buildings, 3525 77th Street, and then I'll immediately follow with 3524 78th Street. These two buildings are part of I'm sorry, I'll go to the sorry. So the two buildings are very similar. On the left, there's a 1940s tax photo, and on the right are the existing conditions of 3525 77th Street. As you can see, the building originally had steel casement windows, and we believe that all of the steel casement windows were replaced in the 1980s. There's no remaining original fabric. And I'll these are photos. Excuse me, I'll go back. The original buildings are Neo-Georgian revival, and we believe that similar style buildings around the neighborhood have used double hung windows. I'm going to show some examples of neighboring buildings. The building on the right is 7712 35th Avenue. That's actually part of the three buildings that are part of this co-op Berkeley Apartments cooperative. And the building on the right is 3520 77th Street, which is immediately across the street from 3525, showing their original double hung windows. In general, in this historic district where there are neo-Georgian buildings, I estimate that about at least 3/4 of the buildings originally had double hung windows. And these are, I'm just going to go through some photographs of the existing conditions at 77th Street. This is on the front of the building, obviously. One of the issues with going back with casement windows are the window air conditioners. Double hung windows do not require modification to install window air conditioners. However, if we went back with a casement window design, the frame would have to be configured differently than the original historic windows to accommodate those window air conditioners. These are the rear elevations. I think I'm ready to go on to the next building. It's a very quick presentation.
Okay.
We're not going to go into that one until
we're going to act on one and then we'll do the other one.
Okay, sorry.
All right, but it is it's a block of multiple buildings that were built uniform in a uniform neo-Georgian design with all of the same windows and details. And so we're going to look at this one application, and I think we can apply our decision to the next application. So, commissioners, are there any questions?
Are there drawings of the proposed
windows?
And are there any changes to what's there, or it's just like, oh, there we go.
So the original, I'll show you some details.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly. The original details do not have a brick mold of any sort. It's just a flat perimeter. And we proposed to replicate the brick mold that is on the original building on 35th Avenue, which is one of the three buildings which we're not presenting today because it does not require a public hearing.
And where is that brick mold on these drawings?
Right here on the proposed, and also on the plan. Right, it's right in here. This is the original, or the existing shows no brick mold at all. It's just flat. Again, that's a replacement window.
Right. And the brick mold that you're matching from one of the other buildings, does that building still have its casement windows?
The other building that I'm referring to that had brick mold originally had double hung windows.
Okay.
That's 7712 35th Avenue. Again, we are not showing that because it's a staff level approval.
Okay, so within the complex, there were casement and double hung windows.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
There are three buildings built at slightly different times in the 1930s and different architects.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, let's see if we have public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? Please come up and to the mic and state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Wanda Shin. I'm pleased Good morning. My name is Wanda Chin. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak at this public hearing with the commissioners. And thank you so much for your dedicated service. I've been a lifelong resident of Queens County, and I've been a resident and property owner in Jackson Heights since 1986. I remember purposely seeking to purchase in the original garden co-ops back then. And I remember well the creation of the historic district in 1993. I was very actively involved with the community in creating that district. I have been a shareholder of Burke Owners, which is the cooperation that owns these three buildings, which is 288 units. I've been a shareholder since 2013. I've served on the board of directors for 5 years and currently serve as treasurer. I'm in favor of our proposals for these two buildings, which is LPC 22-11107 and 22-11105. I know we're doing 78th Street next, but I'm speaking about both. These are master plans to govern the future installation of windows. Our current double hung windows were installed 40 years ago, and they have surpassed their useful lives. We've spent several years researching replacements, and we have proposed double hung windows that respect the architectural integrity of the buildings, will accommodate necessary air conditioning units, and be safer for residents with young children. With new materials and technologies, and they will also be more energy efficient. We engaged an architect who's been experienced with other New York City landmark buildings and experience with exterior restoration work. The cost of this windows project will exceed $5 million. It's a significant amount for our shareholders, but we acknowledge the need to maintain and preserve our homes and our investment in this beautiful historic district. I'm very excited to move forward with this project. We've been working on this for many years. We will believe it will enhance our property as well as the historic district. I thank you for your consideration and look forward to your favorable decision. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak on this item? All right. Not seeing anyone else in the room, I'll turn it over to Gregory Collin to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We received a few remote signups beforehand, so we'll be hearing from those people first. And the first person we'll be hearing from is Cecilia Durbin. So Cecilia Durbin, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Cecilia Durbin. Thank you so much for your time and for your work on the committee. I've lived at the Berkeley in 3525 77th Street since 2018, and have been on the board of this block, which includes 78th Street, that you'll be hearing about next since 2022. I live in the co-op with my husband and our 4.5-year-old. One of the primary reasons we chose to move here to Jackson Heights and to the Berkeley in particular is that the architecture of this neighborhood and these buildings is so beautiful. And because we know that the landmark status means that it will continue to maintain that look. We do, however, believe that those aesthetic values can live in harmony with life in the 21st century. As a parent of a young child, windows need to be replaced for safety. Ours either barely open at all or staying open, which is dangerous for adults, not to mention kids. Double hung windows are a significantly better choice for our building today, which is already they were replaced windows. When they did, as has been previously mentioned, it's not a depiction of the Neo Georgian look. It's actually going to match the buildings that I'm out my window right now. And the third building in our co-op is shaped like a U, and the one on the end is the one that was originally had and still has double hung windows, and the two on the sides are what we want to keep at the double hung windows that they have now, instead of returning to the casement. The structure that would have to change if we went to casement windows makes it harder to put in child guards. It makes it harder for us to open the windows for ventilation, so that we have to use our often, and are just going to make things more complicated. It makes it harder to clean them, makes it harder for us to keep the building looking as beautiful as everything I'm saying also applies to the second building you're about to hear about. And I think that about covers it. Wanda said it all better than I think I possibly could. So thank you guys so much for your time, and we really hope you'll approve.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Walter Chadwick. So Walter Chadwick, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So Walter Chadwick, if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
On?
Hello, Walter. Are you with us?
I'm here, but I don't see. I hit start video. I don't see the camera.
We can see you and we can hear you, so please go ahead.
I'm on an iPhone.
Hello, Walter, we can hear you and yes, we can hear you and see you. Hello, Walter?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have video though, do I?
Yes, you have video.
Okay, well, if you can hear me, I'll speak.
We can hear you and see you, so please go ahead.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you so much. My name is Walter Chadwick. I'm the president of Burke Owners, Inc., otherwise known as the Berkeley. I've lived in Jackson Heights for 27 years. I moved to Jackson Heights because I love the architecture, the gardens. I've lived in several of the historic buildings, and I'm very happy at the Berkeley now. I don't think I heard it mentioned, but the Berkeley was designed by two architects. Philip Birnbaum did 78th Street, and Joshua Tabachnik did 35th Avenue and 77th Street. So it should be noted that when architect Tabachnik did the neo-Georgian buildings on 77th and 35th Avenue, he designed 35th Avenue with double hung windows and 77th Street with casement windows. So it seems like it wasn't important to him which style of windows went with the neo-Georgian architecture. I think that Doug and Cecilia have made the case of why we want to stay with double hung. We supply air conditioning storage rooms in our basements, which tenants take their air conditioners out in the winter if they like, and can store them downstairs with double hung. That can easily be done, and it makes for a more beautiful streetscape with casement windows that have to have special inserts that can't be done. And I think that the way Doug has designed the double hung to look like the original casement windows, that it's a win-win situation. I think the neighborhood will be further beautified by these new windows. And I haven't heard anybody say anything negative to me except good luck with getting your windows. So thank you so much for your time and your consideration. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Philip Lukeman. So Philip Lukeman, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please state your name for the record and unmute your line, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
So, good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for spending the time and looking at our proposal. I'm a resident of the Berkeley. When my wife and I moved to Jackson Heights and we were looking for a place to live, we chose this neighborhood because it had both human scale and a sense of place. And the Berkeley exemplified that. To cut to the chase, for the proposed window replacements, we see double hung windows in the historic district, and they absolutely fit the architectural style and character of this neighborhood. As previous speakers have said, Hawthorne Court, which is another neo-Georgian on 77th Street, has its original white double hung windows in place from the original construction. They're also 6/6 in style, as our proposals are, and it's opposite my apartment in the Berkeley. I look at this apartment complex and walk past it every day. Similarly, the Jackson on 78th Street of the other wing of the Berkeley, which is the other proposal, also has this style. And again, the designs presented to you are visually identical to those. The original Landmarks Commission booklet describing the formation of the Jackson Heights Historic District is replete with other examples of neo-Georgians with this style of window. I dug that booklet up, and I think there are 37 buildings in this district that refer to this style in the research document. So I just want to thank the Commission for its good work in keeping historical district's special character intact. And I hope that the presentation from our board and architect convinces you that this charter and this goal is being met with our proposal. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. I am looking through our attendees list now, and I do not see any hands raised of people who haven't spoken already. So I will note for the record that Queens Community Board 3 recommends conditional approval with the following suggestions. Abatement for lead and asbestos during removal of windows must be provided as required. All damage or deteriorated wood trim at exterior window masonry openings shall be repaired, replaced to match existing. All efforts shall be made to protect all interior surfaces and property of resident from damage due to window removal and new installation. And proper cleanup, debris, dust removal must and will be provided at all apartments during all window removal and installation activities. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to ask if you'd like to address any of those comments by the community board. Okay. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Yes, Commissioner Hoffman Smith.
On the final page of your proposal, there's a sheet of photographs that shows some decorative conditions that haven't been addressed. I don't believe in your presentation yet. Are you replicating these details? And
we are going to, so there are 12 windows on the front of the building. They're triple bay windows on the first and second floor. And we're going to restore this wood trim, the jambs and the wide mullions on those windows. If you go, if I can, I'll go through the. Hold on just a second.
So the windows will sit in between those
Yes.
pilasters?
Yes, the windows sit in between the. Sorry, I'm not able to go through the. Press the wrong button. There is a elevation that shows you've got it. That's it. Yeah. Perfect. This elevation shades the 12 windows that we're talking about, and they have wood Neo-Georgian details, and those will be approved. I think they can be approved at staff level. That's why I didn't talk about them during the presentation.
Great. Thank you.
We're going to restore those.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we're ready to move to our discussion. Commissioner Hoffman Smith, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll begin our discussion. And so this is an application for to replace non-historic double hung windows with new 6/6 double hung windows in this Neo-Georgian style. This is a very typical style in this historic district, and the 6/6 multi-light double hung configuration is also very typical in the district and was noted by the applicant is actually at one of the other buildings within the complex, in the same, which is also in the same style. But this building was originally built with casement windows, and they're proposing the double hung for ease, and they will be matching the brick mold found on the historic 6/6 double hung windows at the adjacent building. So Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
I will. You are calling me on windows. Well, first of all, applause for our master plan. That's always a good thing. And I think I don't have much to say about it. It seems appropriate to me, but maybe others will have more detail. Yeah, appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I'm torn about this, and let me explain why. Casement windows are inherently more energy efficient than double hung windows. I can go into lots of details, but that's a fact. The original windows were casement windows. There was a statement that double hungs are safer. I have no idea why someone would say that. You can put stops on casements for the same child gaps that you would on double hungs. I do realize that air conditioners can be a bit of a pain with casements, since I lived in a building with steel casement windows and had to find an air conditioner that would fit. So I'll be curious what the other commissioners say. I know in the past the commission has approved double hungs in situations like this, but I really would be much happier if they were casements.
All right, Commissioner Goldblum.
While there's no doubt that I agree with Mark on the energy aspects of casements versus double hungs, I think from a historic preservation perspective, my view in this case is that I too am torn, actually, because I'm usually a bit of a bus budget for the architect's original intent. Here, however, I think that both from a consistency perspective and otherwise, I think that there's a good argument to be made for keeping the double hungs. And I think that our general standard has been to judge a building based on its degree of decorative qualities apart from the windows and how much the original windows contributed to the decorative or aesthetic presentation of the building. And so I think in this case, with what I would characterize as a rather robust, mid-rise building, I think that the steel frame casement windows did not, their absence does not significantly diminish the aesthetic impact of the buildings. And I also think that while I think it risks fixing the architect's intent, I think that there is a very good argument for looking at this particular style and finding that the overwhelming majority of buildings that were produced in this style in this period did have double hung windows. That said, I think that the point that Anne raised about the decorative windows on the first two floors is very important, and that should be replicated. I further think that the applicant should look with staff at those windows where there appears to be original woodwork and see what, if there is a brick mold detail there or something, because the brick molds looked rather blocky. And in general, I think that the applicant should work with staff on the profiles of the windows. I think that the 4.5 inch mass of metal left and right and above these windows is rather heavy, and it may comport with what's there now, which itself is a replacement window that is clearly shown as being kind of cladding over the steel frames that remain. But I don't think that's necessarily our standard. And looking at the photos of the other buildings, I think that they look to me anyway like the sight lines were better. And I am on the Marvin website. Their typical sight line is 3.5 inches or 3.25 inches. So I think that it would not be very hard to achieve a better sight line and to look at the brick mold. And the last thing I'm kind of curious about is there any data on the color of the steel windows? My guess from the photo is that they weren't white, but I don't know. I mean, from a style perspective, they probably were, the white was the way to go with this style, but I don't know. It might be interesting to know that.
All right, thank you. And just to be clear, those larger wood windows are to be restored at staff level. So, but we can certainly have staff look more closely at the final.
So use them as kind of a model for what goes on elsewhere.
Understood. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Yes, I always also would prefer to go back with the original configuration of windows. But I think given the fact that they're going through the 6/6, it has a similar level of detail to the casement. And I think since it's a master plan that is going to roll out slowly, that I can find the double hungs appropriate here. And I agree with Michael's comments about the brick mold. If that could be looked at more closely, just to make sure that, there isn't a better, more detailed profile there, because it is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. And if they could reduce the overall width, that would be definitely an improvement over the detailing. So just working with staff.
Got it. Commissioner Jefferson.
I can agree that the double hung would work well, and I think that they should continue exploring proportions if that would add.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
First, I want to thank Mark for being our conscience in terms of energy efficiency. I appreciate your comment. But I can find these windows appropriate.
All right, and Commissioner Lutfi.
So I have to commend the applicant on doing not one, but multiple master plans. I mean, there are a lot of windows here, and I think it's living in a building with a lot of windows. It's a huge step to do something like this. So I commend you for that. I agree. I want to thank Mark for regularly bringing up energy efficient issues, which I think are very important. That said, I think the most important thing here is the uniformity and going back and making sure that the original, 6/6 is going to remain and be consistent, and that it works within the overall facade of the building. I think, double hung windows are easier to live with. And it's kind of, I'm just going to say this in a joking way. I mean, not only is it what everyone has, but we're like fine with it. So the world is getting hotter. People need air conditioning. They need it to be easy. And I think the double hungs are absolutely fine.
All right, so I think we do have a consensus to support the 6/6 double hung windows in this application, but with the condition that they work with the staff on the dimension and profile of the brick mold. Vice Chair Bland, would you be able to make that motion?
Seven. 33 to 25, 77th Street, Jackson Heights Historic District. This is a Georgian style apartment building designed by Joshua Tabalchik. And in 1936, the application is to establish a master plan governing future installation of windows. I know that the building's scale, style, materials, and details are the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Jackson Heights Historic District. I also note that the historic multi-light steel casement windows were replaced by triple single multi-light double hung windows with a white finish by the designation. Recommend approval that all historic casement windows were replaced by the different designation, that the proposed multi-light windows will maintain the scale and articulation that requires the original fenestration, that the proposed 6/6 double hung windows with extruded profiled arranged as paired and triple assemblies. Assembly units will be in keeping with the operation configuration details often found in Georgian style apartment buildings and harmonious with the other buildings in the streetscape. But the white finish of the windows to the Georgian style of the building, but the decorative profile that will be exposed in the screen, that the implementation of the buildings to force fenestration over time, and the applicant will work with staff on the details of the brick mold.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Nay.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. And we'll move to the next item, which is
Right, and this is the second building in this complex, as the architect previously noted. I'll go ahead and read it in its public hearing. Item number 3, LPC 22-11105, application for certificate of appropriateness, number of Queens, block 1277, lot 12, 3524 78th Street in the Jackson Heights Historic District, a neo-Georgian style apartment building designed by Philip Birnbaum and built in 1938. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
This is very similar to the 3525 77th Street. On the left is a historic photograph. There's actually 2 buildings. This building to the extreme left has double hung windows. that's not under consideration. This is the building here, 3524 78th Street, that had the steel casing windows. And then to the right is the existing conditions showing the double hung windows. Again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. On the left is the third building in this complex, 7712 35th Avenue. On the right is a historic photograph of the buildings directly across the street, 3525 78th Street, Hampton Court Garden, showing their original double hung windows in a neo-Georgian style. These are existing conditions photographs of the street elevation. Entrance and setback, the street elevation. And these are rear elevation photographs. Sorry, I didn't take any photographs of the garden, which is really one of the most distinctive parts of these buildings. This is elevation, the street elevation of the building. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions? It's another neo-Georgian building in the block that had casement windows, and they're proposing the 6/6 double hung window, similar to the last application. So if there are no questions, I think we've heard testimony on both applications, but let's just see if there's anyone who wants to speak specifically on this application. Not seeing anyone in the. Yeah, I think she covered it in the first one. Yeah.
And if any member of the public would like to speak on this building, please raise your hands now. Okay, I do not see any hands raised. And as mentioned before, Queens Community Board 3 recommended those conditional approval.
Okay.
So I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great, thank you. All right, commissioners, if there are no final questions, maybe we should move to our discussion on this one. Okay, so let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Lefty, would you make the motion to close the hearing? So moved. Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed, and this is very similar to the last application. They are proposing a window configuration and operation that is consistent with the neo-Georgian style, but doesn't match the historic casement operation. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you start this one?
The same comments that we done before.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts that are different from before?
So I'm going to have a similar vote, and I just want to explain it a little bit. First of all, I want to compliment you on doing a master plan because that's really good. I think the casement windows look better. But if that was the only thing, given the history, the double hungs would probably be all right. But given that I look at climate change as the existential issue of our times, I really don't want to approve things that are less energy efficient and less appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we do have enough to support it. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you lead the motion?
In the matter of LPC -23-07926, excuse me. Application to construct a rear. No, this is the wrong one. No.
It's item 3.
Jackson, okay. In the matter of LPC -22-11105. 35-24 78th Street, Jackson Heights Historic District. Application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features. Excuse me. that contribute to the special architectural and historical character of the Jackson Heights Historic District staff district. I further note that the historic multi-light steel casement windows were replaced by triple paired and single multi-light double hull aluminum windows with a white finish prior to designation. I recommend approval, finding that all the historical casement windows were replaced by the time of designation, that the proposed multi-light windows will maintain a scale and articulation that recalls the original fenestration, that the proposed 6/6 double hull aluminum windows with extruded aluminum profile panning arranged as paired and triple windows assemblies and single unit will be in keeping with the operation, configuration, and detail often found in Neo-Georgian style apartment buildings and will harmonize with the other buildings in the streetscape. That the white finish of the windows will relate well to the Neo-Georgian style of the building, and that the implementation of window master plan will maintain and reinforce unity of the fenestrations over time.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holbrook-Smith, would you second that motion?
I second it.
All right, Mark, will you call the
I
vote?
think we need to add the stipulation about working with staff on the details.
And that this is conditional on your continuing to work with the staff on the dimension and profiles of the brick mold panning. All right, Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
No.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
It's approved. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 4, LPC 23-07926. An application for certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, block 1448, lot 21. 3430 88th Street in the Jackson Heights Historic District. This is an Anglo-American garden home, Neo-Georgian style row house designed by C.L. Verone and built in 1925 to 26. The application is to construct a rear dormer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Lai, Preservation Staff. I will be presenting and the architect Robert Kudock is here to answer any questions. So the subject property is located on the western side of 88th Street, midway between 34th and 35th Avenues. The proposal is here before you due to the visibility of the rear dormer and that the work will require the removal of a portion of significant roof terracotta tiles. And as you can see from the block plan, there are a number of single, double, and triple front and rear dormers, several that were in existence in the time of the 1940s tax photographs. And the commission also approved one, which is this property in the route in 2015. The proposed dormer will be constructed of light cream painted wood framing and clapboards with salvaged and new terracotta roof tiles. The dormer will sit below the ridge and above the eaves and centered along the rear pitched roof. The dormer will feature 3 light cream painted awning windows featuring a simulated meeting rail. Here is the roof plan in section showing the dormer will sit below the ridge and above the eaves. Here's an enlarged roof plan. And here is an enlarged section. And here is a photo from 88th Street looking through a break in the row at the rear pitched roof of the subject property over the central green space. And it's in this location where the proposed dormer would be situated. And here's the same picture, just with the sort of scaled overlay showing the approximate I guess, position and design of the rear dormer. And just a zoomed in shot from the same vantage point. And again, with the overlay, just showing what it would look like. Thank you, commissioners. The architect, Robert Duck, is here to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you. We'll see if we have any questions. Any questions? All right, I don't think we have any questions. Thank you, Richard. So we'll move to public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? All right, not seeing anyone in the room, I'll turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We did not receive any signups beforehand. However, if you would like to speak on this item, please raise your hands now. Okay, I do not see any attendees raising their hands. So I will note for the record that Queens Community Board 3 recommends conditional approval with the following recommendations: that the proposed new main roof dormer shall be respectful to the context of the historic district. The following shall be addressed and be provided. Shed roof dormer shall have Spanish clay roof tiles to match existing, and after installation of new dormer, all damaged or repaired area of roof shall match existing. All sidewalls of new dormer shall have clapboard siding and trim painted white by Benjamin Moore, OC 57, White Heron. Dormer windows shall be 3 contiguous push-out awning type windows hinged at the head of the window unit, made of wood manufactured by Marvin, and that they provide new roofing at the location of the new roof skylight or replace existing roofing with new flat roof application. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you very much. So I think, Richard, you did describe the roof would have the clay tile, and we use clay tile and clapboards on the side, but I'd like to ask the architect if there's anything else in those comments that you wanted to address or any other final statement you'd like to make.
Hi, good morning to the commission. So the question is about the roof tiles, the clay tile.
Well, the community board recommended conditional approval, suggesting that the roof be clay tile, which I can see it is, and that the sides be clapboard. They also had a comment about the operation of the awning windows and had a preference for a very specific white color. And I don't know if that's something you've also incorporated into your.
Yes, the Benjamin Moore I just kind of chose from the historical collection because I figured, it's historical. The clay tile roof, we plan to salvage the existing tiles, and I believe the client also has some original tiles that were left over from the original construction that are also available in case we have, need a few extras.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Yes.
I got confused over the weekend. This new addition, was it there when it was a landmark?
It's a dormer window that's being proposed at the back of the house, and there are other dormer windows in this row of houses and that were there prior to designation, but this is a new one. Okay. All right, so let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed. And as we've just said, this is proposal for a dormer window in a row of buildings that has sort of very picturesque roofs with other dormer windows. And in fact, this is a zoom view, but when you zoom out to the regular eye view, you see that the building in the foreground also has a similar dormer. The applicant would be using salvaged tile for the roof and clapboards and color that would relate to the historic colors on the buildings, this building and the adjacent buildings. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I find this proposal very modest. We're just adding a dormer window in in the rear. And there are other dormers in the nearby neighborhood. So it almost looks as if it really belongs. And I don't think it's very visible from public thoroughfares. So I can find this appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lefty?
I agree with Commissioner Master on all counts. I think it's appropriate.
Vice Chair Bland,
Well, been there from the very beginning, so I think it's appropriate that it be added.
all right, Commissioner Ginsburg,
I agree with my other commissioners, appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Great, appropriate.
Commissioner Holford Smith,
Agreed, appropriate.
and Commissioner Jefferson. Okay, so I think we all are in agreement. Commissioner Master, would you make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 23-07926, 3430 88th Street, Jackson Heights Historic District. An Anglo-American garden home, neo-Georgian style row house designed by C.L. Verone and built in 1925, 1926. Application is to construct a rear dormer. I note that the building scale, style, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Jackson Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, and only a small area of the terracotta roofing will be removed. That the proposed rear dormer will only be visible from public thoroughfares from limited vantage points through a break in the street wall. That the proposed rear dormer will be well scaled to the roof and typical in terms of placement, materials, details, and finish. I will retain portions of the roof at the sides, top, and bottom, helping to maintain the form and perceptibility of the historic roof profile. That the presence of a visible rear dormer will be consistent with early alterations historically found at houses of this type, style, and age found on the block and within the historic district. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Jackson Heights Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland. Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum. Aye. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 5, LPC 23-06086. This is an application for a binding report in the Borough of Queens, block 4960, lot 13735 Northern Boulevard, Flushing Municipal Courthouse Individual Landmark. This is a Romanesque revival style courthouse built in 1862. The application is to install mechanical equipment on the roof and raise the parapet.
That's it. Great. Okay, good morning. I'm Alec Jacobs. I represent I'm a principal with Stephen B. Jacobs Group. We're representing Lacani and Jordan Engineers, who are the prime engineer on this project, as well as DDC, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and Flushing Town Hall itself. This application is a relatively simple one for us to replace some mechanical equipment on one of the roofs and to do some parapet repair extensions and repairs. The building is a Romanesque revival building built in 1862. It's located on the corner of Northern Boulevard and Linden Place. The building's undergone several renovations over the years and 1 or 2 additions. There's primarily a small addition over here to the east that was built in 1892. And then another addition that was built in 1936 in the corner of the building that was built as holding cells for prisoners when the building functioned as courthouse. Later, another third-story addition was added to that, and mechanical equipment was added to that small addition. Let me scroll a little further. So there's some other views of the building. Our work is solely focused on these 2 roofs of the additions, and the only one that's really of concern that requires full board approval is the replacement of this equipment on the northeast corner roof. So the whole plan is to replace this piece of mechanical equipment on the roof, which with an element that's going to be higher, and to extend this brick parapet to another 3 feet to conceal the equipment and to provide, for life safety equipment that's needed. That's the lower roof where we're doing some minor work that is not subject to full board approval. This is the higher roof. So as you can see, the parapet that we're planning to extend in place has been badly deteriorated. We're going to, instead of having a railing, we're going to have the brick parapet extend a full additional 3'6" to provide for current OSHA requirements. And I would better views of the equipment as we go further. That's as much of the view of the existing mechanical equipment you can see right now. The proposed equipment is going to be approximately 4 feet higher. We did some mock-ups. As you can see, the only place you can see this equipment is about 500 feet away across North Boulevard, and you'd have to hit a very specific angle to actually see it. This is the equipment being replaced with the mock-ups of where the new equipment would extend to, which was an additional 4 feet. This is the extension of the brick parapet that's going to occur along the north and east and west elevations. That's the current condition. This is where the existing mechanical equipment is now. And this is the proposed equipment. As you can see, it hits the same footprint as the existing. That is the elevation of the from the east, showing the extension of the equipment and the extension of the parapet. That's the elevation from the north. Again, showing the elevation, the extension of the parapet and the equipment, and as well from Linden Place. And I've got really one more relevant slide to show. Actually, there's a better one. So this kind of shows, there's the mock-up showing the extension of the brick parapet and the extension of the mechanical equipment. And that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions, commissioners? All right.
The new mechanical equipment, is it being replaced just at the end of life, or is it going to be efficient?
Yes, it is at the end of life. It will be more energy efficient. It's dilapidated, and it will also meet the new the current noise requirements as well.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, let's move to public testimony, and I don't see anyone in the room, so I will turn it over to Gregory Kalla to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We received one sign up in advance for this item. So now we will be hearing from Christina Conroy from the VSNY. So Christina Conroy, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the Victorian Society is happy to support the proposed replacement of the modern roofing, access hatches, roof drains, skylight, and mechanical equipment at both areas at the Flushing Municipal Courthouse. The removal of the existing built-up roofing and equipment won't destroy any historic material, and the new materials will aid in the long-term preservation of this individual landmark. In addition, at the upper floor, roof 2, the raised parapet will help conceal most of the new HVAC equipment, and matching the existing brick and mortar for the raised parapet should be relatively easy, given that this section of the building is a recent addition. However, we'd like to see a sample of the proposed acoustic silencer material. We aren't convinced of the necessity of attaching a new 42-inch high safety railing to the parapet of the lower roof. Roof 1 isn't open to the public, and the proposed railing is only a few inches taller than the existing fiberglass railing. We feel it would be reasonable in this case to seek a variance to the rule regarding the height and safety railings. Further, there is no elevation provided for the new metal railing or an indication of its visibility through the decorative fiberglass rail. Now, this lack of information makes it difficult to determine appropriateness. We're concerned that the new railing will only diminish the appearance of the existing railing, which has proved to be a remarkably successful use of fiberglass to maintain the appearance of an historic building. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I am looking through our list of attendees now, and I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that Queens Community Board 7 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great. Thank you, Gregory. So there was some.
Yes, I'd like to respond to the commenter. So there might be a little confusion. So the lower roof has a fiberglass railing that was put up in the 70s to replicate the original railing of the buildings. We're not
touching that.
The only railing, that's the lower roof. So we're not modifying that at all. We're only working on the upper roof, which had the later addition on a roof, which is brick. So we're just going to extend the brick. So we're not touching that ornamental detail that seems to be holding in place.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's move to close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion? I second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed and we'll begin our discussion. And this is a relatively straightforward application to replace existing equipment with new, taller equipment on this later addition that is really utilitarian and set behind the main portion of the building. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I don't think there's anything inappropriate at all about the proposal. I would just ask the applicant to work. I mean, this is such an unfortunate carbuncle on a gorgeous building. It sucks energy like a black hole, but it's there and adding to it's okay. The only thing I would suggest is that, I mean, as this photo shows, pointing and brick selection are key, and the applicant should work with staff to make sure that the brick and the pointing are not creating yet another stripe on a building that really just should be extraordinarily quiet.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Yes, I know the building well. Our office did the restoration of it in the 90s. Left the carbuncle in place. Yes. I think what they're proposing is completely appropriate.
Okay.
And I agree about the brick selection.
Yeah, as always, we will look at that. Commissioner Jefferson.
With difficulty.
Okay. Commissioner Master.
I agree with other comments and I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Vice Chair Bland.
Yeah, I guess all this equipment that we see being replaced on over the past many years, it's always much bigger. I guess and therefore creates this issue and problem for us sometimes, and not here in this case. I guess the silver lining is that it's quieter and it's more energy efficient. In any event, luckily they have the ability here to raise the parapet to hide it, and I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi, I don't know if you were here enough to see this proposal to replace existing mechanical equipment with taller mechanical equipment. It sits on a later simple addition, utilitarian addition.
I actually looked at it and I thought it was appropriate.
Okay, great. So we're all in agreement. And Commissioner Goldblum, could you make the motion?
Sure. Regarding 137-35 Northern Boulevard, the Flushing Municipal Courthouse, an individual landmark, the application is to install mechanical equipment on the roof and raise the parapet. I don't note anything. I recommended approval, finding that the proposed mechanical equipment will be located on a modern addition to the building that is located toward the rear of the lot and will not detract many significant features of this individual landmark. That the mechanical equipment will only be minimally visible from a limited vantage point over the primary facade across Northern Boulevard, where it will be partially screened from view by a decorative railing. That raising the parapet of the modern addition with matching brickwork and coping to meet code requirements will also aid in the reducing of the visibility of the mechanical equipment in the rear on Carlton Place, where it is most visible over the rear facades, and that the work will not diminish special architectural and historic character of this individual landmark.
Thank you. And Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion?
I second it.
All right. Thank you. John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
All right, the next item is public hearing item number 6, LPC 23-07848. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in Borough of Queens, block 8059, lot 25, 233 41 38th Drive in the Douglaston Historic District. This is a freestanding house designed by Arnold S. Montag and built circa 2009. And the application is to construct a garage.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Michelle Curran, Preservation Staff. The proposed scope of work before you today is to construct a new garage at the rear portion of the subject property. As some background, on the left, you can see the property's location at the southwest corner of the historic district in that circle there. The lot was originally part of a larger lot for a property on Bay Road to the north. Approximately 15 years ago, the lot was subdivided and then the current house facing 38th Drive was constructed in 2009. At that time, a stable building, also from the property on Bay Road, was relocated to the location behind the house on 38th Drive. Lost my place there. And it was reused as a garage for the current property. In general, this portion of 38th Drive consists of newer houses constructed after the designation of the historic district on subdivided lots from Bay Road, some of which you can see here on the left. Here you can see some additional photos of the property, including the proposed location of the garage on the right. On this slide, you can see additional images of the stable building prior to last fall. In the fall of 2022, the stable was substantially destroyed by a tree that fell during a storm and was then demolished due to safety concerns. Those photos on the bottom here. On this slide, you can see examples of garages in the historic district. Due to lot sizes and orientations, detached garages are commonly found at rear yards, are usually modest-sized one-story structures, and often have simple design elements that echo the main house. And this slide shows renderings of the proposed garage design. This will be situated in the same location as the former stable. Materials and finishes will match the main house, including wood siding and windows, wood doors, and an asphalt shingle roof. And on the right here, you can see the placement of the garage on the lot. On the west side of the property, there are evergreen plantings and a fence shared with the neighboring property. Here are some details of the proposed garage. And then lastly, here are some screen captures from cyclomedia imagery showing views of the former stable from the street to give you an idea of the visibility of the garage, the eastern side of which will not be visible from the street. The architect is also here on Zoom and can answer any of your questions.
All right, commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, if you could just explain the pitch of the roof and how that, in your view, relates to the existing building.
So we'll ask the architect to answer the question. And if you can just start by making sure you're unmuted and ideally your video is on, and state your name, and then you can answer the question, which is about the slope of the roof on the garage and how it relates to the main house.
Good morning, commissioners. Regarding the pitch of the roof, it is shallower than the pitch of the existing house because of the height restrictions that the zoning permits. The maximum height of the roof to the peak, to the ridge, is about 12 feet. And that's like the maximum I can get as far as the pitch is concerned. But it's a gable end. It's similar to the rest of the house, the existing house. So I think it blends in pretty well.
Frank, can you clarify, there's a height limitation for the ridge a little bit loud?
Correct. The height limitation is maximum height of a detached garage is 10 feet to the mean. So that's to the middle point of the roof from, let's say, the top of the fascia to the ridge is 10 feet. So actually to the ridge, it's about 12 feet in this case. So I try to make obviously a steep pitch roof if possible, but that's the most I can do, which is probably I'm going to say it's a 6 pitch, I believe, 6 to 12.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Is there a reason the original barn structure was not rebuilt? I realize it was demolished for safety reasons, but one could have rebuilt it basically as it was.
I understand, but that wouldn't be the same. And the problem with rebuilding it, if I did propose a new garage on a new building with New York City Building Department, they wouldn't approve it. It would be a variance because it's the height is just too high. So that's why we had to go with something that's, approvable with the maximum height of like 10 feet to the mean. And again, that the stable was an existing structure and that was kind of grandfathered in, which this is a brand new building, would have to comply with today's zoning.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move to public testimony, and I'll note there's nobody in the hearing room, so I'll turn it over to Greg to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We did not receive any sign up beforehand. However, I do see one hand raised in the attendees list, that being Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So if you could please state your name and unmute your line, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is sorry to see that the applicant's garage was destroyed in a storm. We're sympathetic to that harrowing experience. That said, we find this proposal to be inappropriate. We would ask the Commission to require the applicant to redesign the structure to be more in keeping with the original building. An interpretation of the original would be fine, but this particular approach feels out of place. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Okay, I do not see any further hands raised in the attendees list. So I will note for the record that Queens Community Board 11 recommends approval. And we also received a letter from the Architecture Committee of the Douglaston and Little Neck Historical Society. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask the architect if they'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Yeah, yes, I would. So I believe the design of the garage is typical of most of the detached garages that are in the area. If you look at the two other examples that I have in my presentation, it's a similar type of garage. It has the other garages have gable ends, so does this one, or a hip. It's the one on, let's say, 2515 Shore Road, very similar, 2-car garage. It has a hip roof. This one has a gabled roof. The one on 130 Hollywood Avenue, very similar as well. It's a modest design, 2-car. It looks like a 2-car garage with also a gable roof. I think it fits pretty well with the neighborhood. And there's really not much I can do in a detached garage due to the height limitations. So I think it's appropriate for this design. And the materials will be identical to what's on the house. As far as the trim will be the same. The siding will be the same. It will be cedar stained to match the existing house. The roof trim, those will be identical as well. And the trim and the fascia will all match the house. So I think it's something that's modest and it does go with the character of the house. And it's perfect for the back of the this house.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, can you maybe go to the slide that shows the view from the street?
Yeah.
I know it's the previous stable, but that will help us to understand and as we discuss it. So the photo on the top left shows the previous stable. And so what we would be seeing.
All three do. So they're just a few different angles.
Angles.
Yes. So you can really just see sort of the left.
So it was very minimally visible and came from another the property that was subdivided. So it didn't necessarily have a relationship to that house, which is commission approved.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
2009.
And so the proposed garage will sit, you'll see about that first third of it, that the single door essentially is what you're going to see, I think. And then the a second door, and the sort of overhang will be behind the house and not visible. All right, commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's move to close the hearing. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing's closed and we'll begin our discussion. And I think this is a good photo, even though it doesn't show the proposed design, but you can see that we would see at western side of the bay. So I think essentially one door, and the rest of the garage would be behind the house, and it would be in matching materials and colors. So Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
Sure.
I feel as though this is largely appropriate. There are the new zoning regulations restrict the height of the garages, and I think the applicant has done a good job in terms of matching the materials and the colors of the house. It's largely not visible, and the part that is the carport part, which would actually be my only objection, but because it's not visible, I think it's absolutely fine.
Okay. Vice Chair Bland.
I think she covered it all. I'll note also that often, but not always, garages and rear yards in single family zones of a city, often they reflect the architecture pretty accurately of the primary building, but not always. And particularly, I think in this case, the zoning restrictions have kind of prohibited that without going for a variance, which I don't think they would have been wanting to do. So this makes sense to me.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with my other commissioners, appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Goldblum.
I think it is appropriate. I would, however, feel that that because of the restrictions on the gable, which I think will attract a lot of attention to itself, a hip would be a better solution than the gable. As we saw in the examples, hips are very frequent on these rear yard additions, and it won't attract as much kind of. You won't notice the fact that the pitch is lower. So I would just suggest that.
Okay, Commissioner Holford Smith.
I think it's appropriate as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
Appropriate.
Commissioner Master.
I agree, appropriate.
Okay. All right. So I think we do have 6 to approve it as is. I think the hip droop is something that they can explore as they continue to think about it, but we'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
In the matter of docket 23-07848, 233-4138th Drive, Douglaston Historic District, a freestanding house designed by Arnold S. Montag and built in circa 2009. The application is to construct a garage. I note that the stable was relocated to this subdivided lot around 2009. The staff also notes, I also know that the stable was demolished in 2022 after being largely destroyed during a storm. I recommend approval, finding that the construction of the proposed garage will not eliminate any significant landscape features, that detached 2-car garages at rear yards are common throughout the historic district, and that the scale, height, and footprint of the proposed building is consistent with other garages found within the district, that the materials and details of the garage, featuring light gray finished cedar, shake cladding, gray finished asphalt shingles, and white finished wood windows, doors, and trim, will be in keeping with the design and materials of the house, that the proposed covered carport will extend beyond the house at the side of the garage and will not be visible from the street and will not detract from the building or the streetscape, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the Douglaston Historic District.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right. John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you.
So that's approved, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 7, LPC 23-03141. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Staten Island, block 891, lot 1, 209 Flagg Place, the Ernest Flagg House individual landmark. This is an estate including a Dutch colonial revival style mansion designed by Ernest Flagg and built in 1898, later altered in 1907 with Palladian inspired details and also related accessory buildings. The application is to alter facades, modify roof lines and window openings, install new windows and replace roofing.
Good morning. Before I start, I want to thank Leanne, our preservationist. It's been just terrific working with her. I also want to make sure I know how to work these keys. Where's my cursor, Leanne? My mouse. Just use it. Okay. All right. Okay, my client is in contract to purchase this property. He proposes restoring the historic mansion and adapting it to make it comfortable for his 21st century single-family residential use.
Rachel, can I just interrupt you to have you state your name for the record?
I'm so sorry. Rachel Frankel, I'm the architect for 209 Flagg. And can you hear me well? Yes. Okay, thank you. I'll start again. My client is in contract to purchase this property. He proposes restoring the historic mansion and adapting it to make it comfortable for his 21st century single-family residential use. The well-known architect, Ernest Flagg, designed the mansion in the late 1800s, and it became known as Stone Court. Flagg initially conceived and built the house as a summer residence, which he soon altered and added to, making it his family's full-time home. Ernest Flagg's architecture includes many famous and important buildings here in New York City and along the eastern seaboard, yet Flagg was an outsider. He marched to his own beat and is known as much for his brilliance as for his idiosyncrasy. He was an inventive, adaptive architect. Flagg resided at the mansion until his death in 1947. Shortly thereafter, the Pious Society of St. Charles acquired the residence and immediate grounds and converted it to a seminary. By 1957, St. Charles took down the west loggia of the building and replaced it with a new 20,000 square foot institutional wing. They also added new materials to the mansion's facades and replaced most of its windows. Some of the work was done prior to designation in 1967, and some was done following designation. St. Charles also replaced all the original roofing materials. The magenta colored drawing is the landmark's designation map, to which we've added numbers representing views of the property. We circled the historic mansion, which is where we propose our scope of work. View 1 on the upper left-hand side of the screen is the mansion as seen from Flagg Place. To its right is view 2, which is the mansion from the entrance gate on Flagg Place. Further to the right, view 3, which is from West Entry Road. On the lower left-hand side of the screen is view 4, taken from Flagg Court, not to be confused with Flagg Place. We circled the two houses on Flagg Court on the designation map. These late 20th century houses were supposed to provide a view on access into the courtyard side of the Flagg mansion, but as you can see, like the view from West Entry Road, the mansion is not visible. The mansion is only visible from Flagg Place.
Next is a chronology of the mansion, starting with what I call phase one. In Flagg's architectural floor plan, both the east and west two-story dependencies are shown, yet the west dependency, as you can see in the image of Mr. Flagg on horseback, was not built, as evidenced by the fenestrated second-story west-facing facade. The east wing, namely the swim tank with louvered masonry openings, creates an interesting and pronounced asymmetry. Within 10 to 20 years, Mr. Flagg completed what I call phase two. To the west side, he added three masses comprised of a two-story flat-roofed dependency with pediment and a two-story and one-story gable-roofed dependency. He enlarged and added to the original east dependency, making it similar to the new dependencies on the west side. He doubled the depth and added a pavilion to the long, thin swim tank, thereby adding accessory use saunas. In these new masonry openings, he installed windows, not louvers. He removed whitewash from the garden walls and did not apply it to any of the new mosaic rubble walls. Additionally, Flagg built an open loggia and pavilion on the west side. Furthermore, and most significantly, Flagg completely reconfigured the roof and facade. He truncated the gambrel roof, eliminating the second floor's large central dormer, small shallow porch, and two pedimented dormers, and created two new covered porches on the left and right. Under the new second floor porches at the veranda below, he added regularly spaced square columns. A neo-Palladian style is now combined with the original neo-colonial Dutch vernacular, quite an eclectic adaptive creation. Phase three includes the new two-story institutional building, which replaced the west wing loggia and pavilion constructed in phase two. These are images from Flagg Place. These are existing condition drawings. The yellow wash indicates existing historic windows. And this is our proposed elevation. The restorative scope of work is based on investigations by our conservator, Helen Thomas Haney, who is here with us today. She's with Jablonski Building Conservation. Okay. There it is. Can you turn it on? Ah, beautiful. Okay. Oh, gone. Not working. I'll do my best. Let's see. Is that reading for you? Okay. Okay, the restorative scope of work is based on investigations by Helen Thomas Haney of Jablonski Building Conservation. The investigations included on-site probes and review of archival photographs from both landmarks and the Ernst Flagg papers at Avery Library. At the sloping roofs, we propose replacing non-historic asphalt shingles with new slate shingles. Here. None of the original roofing remains. Removing non-historic vinyl siding, which is sort of here and to some extent here and here. The siding and the trim, and to restore or replace the underlying historic wooden siding and trim. This will be handled at staff level. Remove non-historic masonry mortar, which is here. It includes several non-matching repointing campaigns, of which the majority of the joints have failed and are open. So it's here, and it's here, and it's here. We propose properly repointing with compatible mortar, and this too will be handled at staff level. Removing non-historic paint at the chimneys, here, 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 and here. Repointing, repairing, and repainting them with the historic black and white colors, also to be handled at staff level. Remove non-historic white paint here on the first floor and replace with a compatible whitewash. Lastly, replace these non-historic hollow metal ionic columns with a style to match the historic, and this too will be handled at staff level. We further propose removing all the windows, both the few that are historic and the many that are not, and replacing them with energy-conserving double-glazed aluminum clad fenestration. The few existing historic windows are not energy-conserving, as evidenced by the exterior storm windows, which diminish their appearance. Our proposed replacement eliminates the storm windows and reveals Flagg's intentions of multi-light windows. Where the framed openings have been reduced, here, here, and to some extent here, we propose restoring them to their historic size. Where the historic windows are or were casements with mullions, we propose new outswing casements with matching profiles and dimensions. Insect screens are proposed for the interior. Where the windows were double hung or non-operable fixed single sashes, we propose outswing casements with mullions. Where the windows are out of sight at the cellar level, we propose single casements without mullions. At the round widow's walk at the top, we propose replacing the non-historic octagonal railing in vinyl with round railing in white metal to match the configuration of the historic in phase one. At the second floor, we propose removing the non-historic rotting wooden railings and replacing them with a sympathetic design in black metal. This will be handled at staff level. Additionally, we propose reconfiguring the pavilion's roofline to create a more unified east wing over here and to improve rainwater drainage. Also at the east wing, we propose enlarging and regularizing the masonry openings and adding black metal railings and steps. At the two symmetrical dependencies flanking the three-story main house, we propose removing the non-historic poured concrete porch at the east dependency and the non-historic cellar enclosure at the west dependency. At both dependencies, we propose constructing new steps in the mosaic rubble stone with black metal railings. And to repeat, sort of the key changes include window replacement, restoration of facade siding and trim, and reconfiguration and regularization of east wing roof lines and masonry openings. This is the view from Flagg Place. This is the render from Flagg Place, and I note here that the landscaping has been pruned to sort of open the view. The standing seam roof will be a darker. I brought in a little physical sample by Commissioner Ginsburg. That's the color we propose. It will be that sort of darker color. And that though the dormers and chimneys may look larger, we're not proposing to change their sizes. And this is a zoom of the render, highly privileged view. Okay, these are the historic conditions from the courtyard side. And I'd like you to note that the new mosaic rubble walls are without whitewash, and some of the original whitewash walls now don't have whitewash. These are the existing images from the courtyard side. Existing condition images from the courtyard side. Again, the historic windows are washed in yellow. and our proposed conditions. The restorative work, scope of work that will be handled at staff level is the same on this side, except that the existing columns here are historic and will remain. Additionally, on the courtyard side, we propose removal of non-historic white paint and mortar, and any whitewash underneath, and restoring the mosaic rubble stone using a compatible mortar. For the windows, just as we proposed for Flagg Place, to repeat, we propose removing all of them, both the few that are historic and the many that are not, and replacing them with energy conserving, double glazed, aluminum clad fenestration. The few existing historic windows are not energy conserving, as evidenced by the exterior storm windows, which diminish their appearance. Our proposed replacement eliminates the storm windows and reveals Flagg's intentions of multi-light windows. On the first floor of the main house, where the historic windows are casements with mullions, we propose new outswing casements with matching profiles and dimensions, and installing a new window at the one that is filled in on the left. Oops. At the upper stories of the main house, where the historic windows were double hung, we propose restoring the historic framed openings and installing casement windows with mullions. At the third floor, we propose replacing the single window dormer here with an enlarged 4-window dormer to provide sufficient light and air. At the cellar level of the main house, where the windows are out of sight, we propose lowering the sill heights and installing a single casement without mullions and a door of similar style. At the 2-story east dependency, we propose restoring the semicircular window masonry opening and installing a new window as shown. And at the 2-story west dependency, we propose also installing a window without mullions. At the north-facing facades of the 1-story dependency, we propose installing new casement windows without mullions and lowering the sill of the window at the cellar level. At the 1-story east wing, we propose lowering the sill heights and at window 0112, widening the opening. We propose installing new casement windows with mullions. And this is a bit of a comparison between existing and proposed. And to give you the views on the courtyard side, the perpendicular sides of the dependencies. The other side, at the existing chapel, non-historic, in the 2-story west dependency, where the historic windows are casements with mullions, we propose new outswing casements with matching profiles and dimensions. We did not propose keeping or replacing the multicolored lights or church iconography, which are not historic, and you'll see some images of those toward the end of my presentation. At the windows opposite the chapel in the 2-story east dependency, we propose increasing their height. At the east and west 2-story and 1-story dependencies, we propose new dormers at the roofs to provide much needed natural light and air. At the cellar level of the dependencies, we propose dropping the existing windowsills to let in ample light and air. At the 2-story east and west dependencies, which Flagg conceived at the outset, we propose traditional style casement windows to match the style proposed for the upper floors of this 3-story main house. At the 1-story east and west dependencies, which Flagg added later, we propose single casements without mullions. These are the facades these are the east facades, historic image, existing condition images, Existing condition drawing. Proposed drawing. At these facades, we propose a similar scope of work already described elsewhere. Plus, at the east wing, that long skinny swim tank, we proposed a new opening to accommodate 2 new garage doors, reconfiguration of the roofs, as already discussed in the Flagg Place facade. Lastly, we will look at the west facade, existing and, well, that's the comparison of the east facades. And this is the west facades, historic photos, existing condition photos. These are views here, 12, and here to some extent as well. Existing condition drawings showing you the 2 historic windows, and proposed similar scope of work as previously described. And existing and proposed together. Now I'm going to talk about elements, starting with masonry. In phase 1, all the mosaic rubble walls received whitewash. By phase 2, except for the first floor of the 3-story main house and the 2-story dependencies courtyard facing walls, all whitewash was removed and newly constructed mosaic rubble walls were not whitewashed. Per our conservators' probes and analyses, layers of white paint now cover the historic whitewash. Hygrothermally, the mosaic rubble walls perform best against moisture infiltration and thermal changes when properly repointed with a compatible mortar and without paint or whitewash coverings. Whitewash by its very nature is maintenance intensive, requiring regular reapplication. It fares better when protected, and therefore we propose whitewash only on the first floor of the covered veranda on the Flagg Place facing facade. Next, I'm going to talk about dormers. The windows and dormers of the 2- and 1-story dependencies do not provide sufficient light and ventilation for the intended single-family residential use. In his writings, Flagg promoted what he called ridge dormers. However, with the exception of 2, he did not incorporate any at his mansion. Rather, he provided dormers at wall plates. At the second floor of the phase 1 Flagg Place facing facade, he designed an exceptionally wide dormer, and at the east-facing facade, he provides something akin, both precedent-setting for our proposal. We see Flagg's use of a wide multi-light dormer at Byrne Hospital on the campus of the Pomfret School, and markedly, no ridge dormers. Contrary to Flagg's writings, ridge dormers are more likely to add to energy load than to reduce it. Furthermore, ridge dormers provide no visual relief from the interior nor connection to the outside. Alterations to masonry openings and roof lines. So the valley created between phase 1's gable roof and phase 2's hip roof results in an unfavorable condition for shedding rainwater, as evidenced by leaks in the space below. The original swim tank provided for such pursuits when the weather precluded use of the outdoor swimming pool. Phase 2's addition included accessory use saunas. The small masonry openings afforded privacy and conserved heat. The east wing and pavilion have not functioned as such since one of the seminarians decades ago had an accident from which he fortunately recovered, yet as a result, the swim tank and saunas were eliminated and the space was converted to a reception hall. My client wishes to use the space as a kitchen, dining, and gathering space and wants to enjoy the sprawling views and have easy access to the outdoors. He also wants ample ventilation and light for the kitchen. The enlarged masonry openings we propose recall the openness of the former loggia and present a residential appearance. The trim and the restoration of the framed window openings will all be handled at staff level. The siding and restoration of roof overhang, and what we've proposed for railings, these two will be handled at staff level. The modifications to the site. So here's our entire site. Here, more or less, is the mansion, and this is the area I'm focusing on. And we propose a very modest amount of work, including the removal of a light, relocating a tree per the arborist's recommendation, removing some asphalt and concrete and replacing it with new concrete, so no change to the amount of paving, remove the non-historic shed that's falling apart, and this one area of grass, about 650 square feet, replacing it with asphalt so as to have a proper turning radius for the new garage doors. This is our window and door schedule. These are the windows on the courtyard side that are historic that we propose replacement. On the lower right from the interior, these are the non-historic colored. I'm not too sure if it's what sort of applique it is, and the non-historic religious iconography. As I've previously explained, these are the windows on the Flagg Place facade that are historic that we propose replacing. Also on the Flagg Place facade are these historic windows, which we propose replacing as described. For the roof at the east wing, we propose a standing seam metal roof with an 1.5 inch standing seam, one pencil rib down the middle, and in the patrician bronze. And then for the slate roofing, we're proposing this sort of dark charcoal. In conclusion, I'm returning to our proposed elevation for Flagg Place, where most of the work is restorative, and that which is new is largely not visible from Flagg Place. The proposed work represents what my client believes to be in the best interest of restoring the house, both architecturally and, once again, for single-family residential use. These are the proposals that are important for his moving forward with the purchase. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have questions? Commissioner Goldblum, followed by Vice Chair Bland. Okay. Sorry.
Mine is a overarching question. What is the subdivision?
There's no subdivision.
That's sort of a tongue-in-cheek question.
It's no history, but there's no subdivision.
I think you're making us all very comfortable with that answer. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Thanks. Amen to that. A couple of questions. First of all, what's the plan with the 1950s edition?
No plan yet.
Okay.
Can't think about that yet.
Can't think about it. Well, wouldn't want to think about it if you can. Why standing seam?
We aren't sure what the original roof at the original swim tank was. I think it was glass. Glass is not a good choice for this use. We also want to create like a little kind of attic space for insulation and energy conservation. We want to treat it differently, and we think the standing seam is attractive.
What was on the kind of the phase 2 dependency pavilion sauna thing, you know?
Yes, it is a mostly flat roof with these little sort of vent peaks that you can maybe see in one of the historic photos.
Yeah, I'm looking at your let's see, what page is this? Page 25 of 52. Keep on going.
Yeah. So This is a zoom in photo of the swim tank.
Right, that I can see.
Uh-huh.
Keep on going to 25.
Okay, so here, if you look at this,
Right.
it's sort of a kind of a flat roof and it's got these little peaks.
Uh-huh.
And that's a zoom in from our 1974 aerial photo.
Right. Well, I'm actually asking about your page.
The pavilion.
Right.
Yeah, so that was
L123.
am I right to call it a sort of pyramid thing?
Correct.
Yeah, and so
Bingo. Oh, yep, there it is. Top right. So what do you think that's made out of?
I do not know what it was made of originally. No
Okay.
original historic roofing material as far as we have probed remains.
Okay.
But Flagg did use in one of his treatises, he talked about a kind of an asphalt shingle
Uh-huh.
for his small house book, if you're familiar. And maybe it was that.
Could be. All right.
It's kind of a mystery.
And tell me a little bit about why you chose to go with, on your courtyard side, a combination of replacement mullioned windows and unmullioned windows.
So my client would have liked to have put casement windows with no mullions everywhere. And I got him to a point where he understood that that wasn't appropriate everywhere. And then I started to think about the evolution of the house and how it changed over time and how some things were new. And Flagg also was always experimenting with materials, new materials, remove it, try something else. And I thought it was appropriate to treat the newer historic buildings differently. And perhaps also give my client what he wanted, which were these unobstructed views. The property is magnificent.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, in terms of approach, so this being approach as it's not a restoration, right? This is a landmark building, and somehow it became a landmark, and it's not being restored, but it's being restored interpretively. Is that the concept that you're using? Is that
in some places we're restoring with preservation in mind, and in other places like Flagg, we're being adaptive.
So then this landmark notion, that landmark building that I keep thinking it should be precious, it's not in my mind. I'm wrong, right? This can be.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to remember that we do approve change, even on individual landmarks, if we can find that change is appropriate. And I think that the applicant is, in thinking about the proposed changes, thinking about the layers of change that have already happened here, even during Flagg's time, and how he changed things over time. And I think trying to find ways that new installations can fit in with that history, that layered history.
So the changing of edges, the blinds, okay, I got it. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Why are the new casements out swing when the historic ones were in swing?
So if we need insect screens, and if we have in-swing casement windows, we're going to have screens on the outside. And we are trying to fulfill that intention, Flagg's intention, visually as best as possible. And we think it's more beautiful without insect screens, of which there were none anyway at this time.
Okay. Yes, Corey.
And I just wanted to clarify one point that may have been a misunderstanding with staff, but the railings are before the commissioners as well. What's being proposed is a simplified metal railing in I think in a darker color, when you can see on the historic photo here and in the earlier schemes, it was, I think, always white as we saw it. And there was a more decorative panel that existed up at the terrace at the second level, even though there were simpler pickets elsewhere in the various phases. So that's also before the commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Any other questions? Okay, let's move to public testimony, and then we may have more questions after that. And I'll note there's nobody in the public hearing room, so I will turn it over to Gregory Collett to see if we have remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We received one sign up in advance, and I do see 2 hands raised in our attendees list. So first we'll be hearing from Christina Conroy from VSNY. So Christina Conroy, I am promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the Victorian Society is happy to see Ernst Flagg's house, which he designed and constructed for his own use, where he lived for almost 50 years, and which he expanded as his life changed, may soon lose the ill-conceived accretions which have accumulated over the years. The removal of the existing vinyl siding, fascia trim, gutters and leaders, the existing replacement windows, and the existing asphalt roofing are all welcome changes. And we are happy to see the previously painted areas of the stonework, which Flagg had quarried on his own Staten Island property, will lose the white paint that hides its distinctive color palette. We also find the proposed white painted wood windows and trim and the copper gutters will bring this individual landmark closer to its original appearance. And that use of a white finished metal railing at the Widow's Walk seems sensible for this very exposed location. However, we urge reconsideration of the applicant's choices, and these include, first, the introduction of standing seam metal roofing on the courtyard wings. Now, noticing that Flagg had a greenhouse on the estate, we believe that the photos of the swimming pool wing on L101 actually show a greenhouse roof, not a standing seam metal roof at this one location. We therefore believe that extensive use of standing seam metal roofs is unprecedented on the house, and its use is undocumented on the courtyard wings will seriously compromise the historic appearance of the house. Second is the addition of the centrally placed third floor dormer facing the entrance court. This large dormer will draw attention away from the historic curved roof line of the entrance bay directly below. Now, Flagg used curved elements so sparingly, he obviously meant each of them to be clearly seen as an important individual element. Third, the removal of the small pyramidal roof that rises like a punctuation mark at the end of the swimming pool. Fourth is the removal of the large areas of historic stonework, not only from the harborside facade of the swimming pool wing, where Flagg's small windows contrast nicely with the large windows he used in many locations on this facade, but also from the wings flanking the entrance court, which Flagg added prior to 1917. Fifth is the installation at the wings flanking the entrance court on the facade, which face away from the court, of bands of single pane windows as shown on drawings L110 and 111. And sixth is the loss of the original proportions of the swimming pool wing by the proposed reconfiguration of the roof lines at this wing and the adjacent space, and by the addition of garage doors.
Christina, I'm terribly sorry. If you could please summarize your point.
I'm done. I'm done. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Okay. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. So Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds most of these interventions good and largely restorative. However, given that this is an individual landmark, we feel that the restorative approach should guide all interventions here, and we encourage a more sensitive and contextual approach to the larger alterations of the building, such as expansive window openings and choice of roofing materials. We note that the roof of the swimming tank appears to have had a greenhouse roof. We wonder if the applicant might study adjusting the seam spacing of the metal roof to more closely match the light spacing of the original skylight. HDC recognizes the challenges of this project, and we appreciate the skill with which the architect seems to be working through the project details. We simply ask the applicant and the LPC to work to further refine the roofing details and reduce the amount of glass being proposed for the swimming tank. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from John Graham. So John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And if you could please unmute your line and state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham speaking for myself. In the years I was a commission staff member, I wrote virtually all the permits issued for buildings at the Flagg estate and made many site visits. I was therefore very interested to see the proposal in front of you. I'm speaking today about one aspect of this proposal, the use of standing seam metal roofs. The architect stated that it's possible, based on historic photos of the swim tank soon after construction, that the roof was glass. I believe this is correct. I'll note that Flagg had a greenhouse on his property. Also, I found a photo and plans of a house Flagg designed, which was built circa 1900, just at the same time his house was constructed. This is the photograph of the plan of the Mrs. A.C. Clark house built on Riverside Drive in New York City. You can see that there's a wing which held a conservatory and a bowling alley. And here are the plans. Yep. The conservatory and the bowling alley stick out at that strange angle, and the roof plan shows that there were glass panes here. Therefore, as I believe that the swim tank roof was glass and that standing seam metal roofs were never used by Flagg on his house when he was in residence, I do not think it is appropriate to use them so lavishly in this proposal. The pitched roofs should have shingles. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks so much for your testimony. I am looking through our list of attendees right now, and I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that Staten Island Community Board 2 recommends denial. And I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to turn it back to you and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard and maybe speak a little bit about the community board as well.
It sounds like the proposal for the standing seam metal roof is what makes folks unhappy. And I simply would argue that this building does not represent a pristine moment. It represents Flagg the architect and what he was experimenting with, changing his mind, etc., over a course of time. And I don't see that use of a new material is so problematic. I don't see it as diminishing. I actually see it in a sort of sequence of, I mean, hopefully this property will be around for a lot longer and materials are ever changing. And I think what's interesting about this house is that it did change over time. It's what's made it interesting and challenging. And that's how I would kind of contextualize our proposal for a standing seam metal roof. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay. So we'll move to close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. This is a really important landmark, and many of us recall a previous application to develop the site with houses around the mansion. And so some of us at this table went on an extensive site visit and are quite familiar with the house. And I think that will help as we have our discussion today, because there are a number of components here that we need to address. Much of the restoration work is being approved at staff level, but there are changes to window openings, and there's both in their size and or creating new openings. New windows, some matching the historic configuration, others not matching the historic configuration. I think the change in material is also before us, and change in the roof lines and roofing materials and the railing materials. So we have a lot of components to discuss, and we'll begin that discussion now. I think I'm going to start with Commissioner Goldblum and then Holford Smith, because I know you both were at the site visit. I know Commissioner Holford Smith, you have a history with it as well. So I think that will be good for setting the discussion off. Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
Wow. As Fred had said, I mean, it's a relief. Thank goodness for rich people. It's a relief from a historic perspective, if not from a housing count perspective, that this property is going to remain intact, and that the landscape, which I think was very much a part of the initial design intent of the architect, I believe that's not a challengeable statement, will remain as intact as it currently is. That's a real blessing. That said, however, I think it's important, I say to myself, to resist the bias of lowered expectations that might come about from having been expecting to see something quite a bit worse. And I think that I take Gerardo's comment very seriously, and that, this is an individual landmark building by a noted architect, and it's not really an adaptive reuse. It's an adaptive use. It was a house. It had a period when it wasn't a house, but it's going back to its original use, which is as a single family house, which is both good and also, I think, important, because I think as a commission, we do consider adaptive reuse, the demands put on a building by adaptive reuse to permit perhaps a different view of appropriateness than we would in other circumstances. That broadly said, forms background to how I think about this. I think that we have different facades. I think that the most important facade, number one, is the one facing downhill, the one that we see on the screen now. And I think generally the things that are proposed here are appropriate. I think that the modifications to the windows, the replacement of the historic windows, even the change of the operation of the windows to outswinging is appropriate. I do think that screens are kind of one of those necessary evils that we have nowadays. I say as I scratch my mosquito bites from my bad screens. They're important, and I think they do, however, really impact the way a historic building is seen. So I think it's a good decision. I think that the modifications to the openings in the swimming pool wing are appropriate. However, I think that the roof modifications, both the material of the pool wing could theoretically be a non-shingle material. Glass would have been nice. It's funny, most people like to put glass in these things nowadays, but I think that standing seam in and of itself could be appropriate for that wing, not for the end pavilion that used to be the sauna. That should go back to being a shingle product, either slate or wood or something of a similar nature. And if it's hard to tell from the image, but if the slope of that is being changed, that I think would not be appropriate. I think that it was the intent for that pavilion to have a higher roof than the wing that it attaches to, and that should remain. I do think, however, that if a standing seam is used for the former pool wing, that the use of what I think is a kind of more industrial standing seam product with the V grooves in it, that's not a historic material at all. So I think that should be re-examined. And if they do want to use a standing seam, that it should be a traditional standing seam material like copper or lead coated, well, not lead, turn coated copper. Something of that nature that would be more historic, and that, like HDC suggested, could emulate the proportions of the glazed roof. Specifically, you can look at some standing seam roofs have like a kind of a block put in underneath the seam, so it's not so skinny, and might give it I mean, they could work with staff on that. Something that would give it a little bit of heft and kind of simulate more the rhythm of the glazing, if not the surface. On the courtyard facade, which is number 2, also I think the dormer modifications on this facade are appropriate, and the railing should be historic. It should not be simplified. On the courtyard side, there's been more changes proposed on the 3 sides of that courtyard, which is a very important, if idiosyncratic space. I think that the application to, can you go to that page, please? Let's go to the opposite facade. Entry facade. Thanks. Great. You have one in comparison, the new versus old. Great, perfect. So I think here, going from the top down, the 2 flanking dormers on the top level are appropriate, but the central dormer is too large. I think it can be made bigger, perhaps, but not kind of so wide that it really threatens to kind of feel like a whole story as opposed to a roof. I think that the changes to the wings with the fenestration of what used to be like a vent on the right is fine, and I think they were saying it's a restoration of that arched window is also okay. I think that all the stuff down at the cellar level is fine. The courtyard sides are proposed to have some extensive new dormers put on them. There you go. Great. I think that I think that the dormer on the main to the center of this image is inappropriate. I think that you have historic dormers there that are intentionally lined up with the windows below, and they should stay. I think that the modification to the lower wing to the left is too extensive, and I think you got a little confusion. I mean, you kind of expressed it when you described those as being a compromise with your client. Kind of sucks having a huge monster historic landmark building, but one of the prices you pay is that it's got to be historic. And I think that it's a compromise that I personally couldn't endorse. I think it looks like a bad renovation. I think that while I think you could have an extended dormer or a series of dormers on that lower wing, I think they have to either take the form of something that is uncompromisingly contemporary in appearance and thus clearly discernible as an incursion, or something that is more in keeping with the original architecture. I think that the enlargement of the lower level windows is appropriate, but I think that they too should not be single pane. And that same comments go for the other instances where you have these extended dormers.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Holford Smith.
Yes, thank you. I do applaud the applicant, potential owner for trying to restore the building to much closer to its original configuration of materials and but I have this similar concerns that Commissioner Goldblum had. I think one of the characteristic details of Ernest Flagg's cottages are the small inset windows, often right below the eave line of the roof. And I think the extensive enlargement of the windows to encroach into the roof line as a dormer are not appropriate. Looking at this elevation, I think trying to keep more into that sort of discrete punched openings, it would be more appropriate. I agree on the increase of, if we're just going to stick to this elevation for now, that the two dormers, that the enlargement of the two individual dormers into one large one is also not appropriate. Let's see. I think if we go back to the front facade, I'm a little concerned about the enlargement of all the windows on the swimming pool wing. And, you know, these are characteristic punched openings within the mosaic stone walls is really kind of overwhelmed by 3 sets of French doors in this facade. I think that could be reduced. And I'm also wondering how they're going to create those enlarged details within the walls that, you know, the Ernest Flagg design was a concrete wall, basically. It was sort of poured concrete with a stone inset in it, not an applied rubble. So I think it's going to be difficult to see how they're going to enlarge these and have it look original, or at least not, you know, that they haven't sort of destroyed the concrete matrix. So to that end, it might be more appropriate for the sort of large windows in the little tower at the end to keep that original opening and just drop it down rather than try to recreate that lintel detail. I think that the swimming pool roof configuration should be maintained with the distinctive pitched roof over the original swimming tank, and then the lower roof over the sort of the sauna area with the taller roof at the end pavilion. And I agree that this standing seam should be limited to the swimming pool roof and should try to mimic the original glass skylight. I agree that the material and sort of configuration that they're proposing is a little more of an industrial type of standing seam and not really a residential. And I think that the rest of the roofs should all be maintained as some kind of a shingle, just to keep the standing seam at the swimming pool. At the back facade, I agree that the dormer over the main entry should be reduced in size, and it probably could be enlarged from what it is now, but what they're showing now is overwhelming the facade. And I think just in general, the sort of extent of window is right now overwhelming to the building.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Commissioner Jefferson.
And all those 5 issues that I have listed, they have covered it all.
Thank you. Commissioner Master, this is your borough. You may be also familiar with the site, even though you weren't here when we did the original review.
Yeah, so I have to say, this is, since I've started, this is the first Staten Island project that we've discussed. And as my first project, I have probably one of the most important and magnificent landmark sites on Staten Island. as we can see from its early designation in 1967. I'm very familiar with this site. I live about a mile away. So I pass by Flagg Place on a regular basis, and I have a friend who lives adjacent to this property on Flagg Place. And I have another friend who lives in one of the cottages on West Entry Road and Flagg Place. So I know the site very well. And I also understand the history of the site and the controversy that we had, I'd say 5 years ago, when there was a developer who wanted to develop, I think, a 55 plus community that I don't want to say fortunately, but fortunately did not take place. The property is magnificent. I can attest to the fact that the landscape is vast, and that's an important part of it. And that from Flagg Place, you cannot see this mansion very well. You cannot see the details because it's set back so far. But it's a very important landmark on Staten Island, and everybody knows it as the St. Charles Seminary. So I'm really excited that it's actually going back to, I guess, the opposite of adapted for use, which is going back to the original use as a single family residential home, which is remarkable. I mean, that never happens, especially on this scale with this type of property in this neighborhood. It's amazing. So I'm very supportive overall of the project. In terms of making it amenable for a family to use, to live there, to convert it into a kitchen. I understand the need for light and the modern appliances. So that said, thank you, Michael, for taking the lead on something that to a layperson is very overwhelming in terms of the details, but I did take some notes. So I will say the restoration of the facade is incredible. The removal of the vinyl siding is good. Removal of the whitewash is good. I think replacing all the windows for energy efficiency is good. The dormers, I know that they're necessary, but I do agree with Michael, what he said, that some of the dormers are overwhelming, and I will refer to basically what he said. The garage door, I think opening is appropriate and necessary. The railings are fine. And then I think there were some issues on, the primary facade, the openings where the kitchen. I think Michael was okay with it and said that it might be a little bit too dramatic. I'm a little bit torn. I do understand that that's a kitchen use and that they probably do need a little bit more light. So I'm actually okay with the openings on the primary, on that wing, because I think it's important for the use. And then in terms of the roof, I'm going to defer to the architects and the experts and see what the group says.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Lutfi.
Well, I would say this side of the table has done an excellent job. And
hold up this side.
yeah, that's going to be you, Fred. I'm going to agree with a lot of what has been said, but I'm going to really just visually point to something, which is, and I think everyone's mostly has mentioned it, is that when you look at on the front facade, the before, the original, and then the after, the thing that is kind of gives me pause concerning the windows is that they really start to overwhelm the facade. And what you end up looking at is, instead of looking at the building with lovely windows in it, you're looking at the windows, and maybe there's a little bit of facade around the edges. So I think all of the comments about the windows, and some of them also include expanding the size of the windows where makes sense. I think all the comments about these windows are appropriate and I agree. And I also agree with the comment about, restoring the historic railings. And I am in agreement about the standing seam roof, that it's just to spend a lot of time in Cape May, New Jersey, and where people are replacing their roofs with these very industrial standing seam roofs, it's just kind of gives you pause. So I thought actually that Michael's recommendation about if it's going to happen, actually, I'm not sure it should happen, but if it were going to happen, I think it should be something more traditional so that at least it will relate to the building as a whole. And the door and all the comments about the dormers being oversized. I mean, I'm just going to incorporate that into my whole window comment, but I agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Chair Bland.
I'm an earnest Flagg junkie. I've always admired this architecture, almost first among a whole host of very interesting and accomplished peers, some slightly older than he, but I always found his creativity within kind of a Beaux-Arts style to be very exciting. And this home of his, which is I had no idea it was a landmark so early in the commission's existence, which is an indicator of its importance, I think. I also will say that for me, so my friend, I worked with a young architect and young associate Don Flagg, and finally, after 2 or 3 years, I said, Don, any relation? And he looked at me and he said, direct. So, in any event, so this is a very important, and it's such an exciting moment, I think, for all of us who went on that incredibly interesting, but somewhat concerning tour that we had a few years ago. The building is in itself fascinating, and the writing of its history extraordinary, and it also kind of paints the way for our view of it now. But for me, the landscaping around it, the openness, the vastness of the openness it was almost to me as important as the building itself. And to hear that there is no plan to further subdivide the property is more than reassuring. It's very, very comforting. And if it takes wealth to do it, well, okay, in this case, good. So to ease the note-taking of our incredible chair was making unbelievable notes that mash up everything in ways that I can't even imagine him doing. I will make it easier by saying I think the several recommendations that were made on that other the west side of the table earlier, I agree with, and I don't need to repeat them all. But I will say, 2 new windows, just for emphasis, cut back in the way that Michael and were suggesting, I think. And I think also the standing seam roof, if not commercial, but a old-fashioned standing seam roof, is going to be suggested for the swimming pool. That could kind of replicate the idea of the glass that apparently was there. So that to me makes sense. Otherwise, I don't think I need to prolong all of your points. I think we can just put zeros among them.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Well, I just have to say, early in my career, when I worked at Fred's firm, I pulled an all-nighter building a model for Donald Flagg. which was not at all like anything his grandfather or great grandfather did. I agree with basically every other comment, and I just want to talk about the pool wing for a minute because the windows are too big. It is, but I understand the need for light. So I'm wondering with the integration of if one looks at a different standing seam roof or more appropriate, one could put some skylights. I realize we don't want to make the whole roof glass because that would make it into an oven and hard to heat, etc. But if you need light in there and you don't want to do too much with the windows on the facade, that seems to me a way to hopefully have your cake and eat it too. And in general, beside, I don't need to repeat what's already been said.
Okay, and then I just thank you all for your thoughtful comments. And I think one thing that we haven't really touched on is the proposed slate roof material for the other roofs. We, I think, are not sure what the original material was. It's asphalt now, but I think there's a good thought that it might be cedar. And does anyone have any thoughts on the choice of slate here? I don't know, Anne.
Yeah, I think they should look for something that's more appropriate to more similar to a wood shingle than a slate. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there are options out there.
All right, great. Okay, so I want to thank the applicant for a really clear presentation on, a large project with a lot of components. I think it is very exciting to see the proposed single family use as opposed to a development here, and that the landscape will be preserved. And I think much of the approach is restorative. And so I appreciate the efforts you've taken there. I know that was largely, due to your hand in this. So, but I think that there are very helpful comments that we've heard today about how we can just push that a little bit further and thinking about the scale and proportion of those window openings, the detail of how you do that within the concrete and stone, this embedded stone, and then keeping the pyramid roof, and then rethinking the roofing on the swim tank. So we'll have you work on those some more, and we'll have you back as soon as you're ready. Thanks very much. All right, so with that, we end, and as also the slate roof material should also be reconsidered. So we're going to break for lunch now. We'll be back at 1:40. So we'll ask all members of the public to leave the room, and we'll ask all members of the public on the Zoom meeting to exit the Zoom meeting at this time voluntarily, and you can rejoin at 1:40. If we have to remove you, you may have technical difficulties rejoining. So we'll ask you all to do that now. Thank you, and we'll see everyone at 1:40.